All right, welcome to another Matt Maran Motoring live stream here on the Matt Maran Motoring YouTube channel. I hope you're all having a great weekend here, and thanks so much for joining in here on this live stream. So like all the other live streams, we're going to go for about 2 hours here. I'll be giving priority answering to anyone who does a super chat or a super thanks, as well as anyone who's a member here with the green usernames. They always get that priority answering. So, yeah, I see we have Kyle, Brian, Fook, and Ace that have all joined in so far. Thanks for joining in, everyone. Hope you're all doing well too. And so yeah, we'll just be answering questions here. And I'm also going to see, I know there was a way for me to do membership gifting. I think I now get membership gifts, but I still don't see an option to do that here. I'm not sure why. So I was hoping that YouTube is going to get that figured out, because they told us they were going to be able to do that. And I still have found no possible way to do that for some reason. So anyway, but I see Raphael and Kevin have joined in as well. Thanks for joining in, everyone. And hopefully one of these days I'll get that membership thing figured out. But I also see we got Matthew and FR8 all joining in too. So thanks for joining in, everyone. So B. Doyle has the first question. He says, what are your thoughts on the Z4 M40i compared to the competition? Well, I mean, there's not really that many competitors these days, right? So, I mean, it's kind of slim pickings, especially if you want something German, I mean, the Roadster thing is so rare. And I mean, obviously the main competitor is going to be the Boxster. I guess now, I guess you can't really consider the Amira a competitor, since that's a hardtop. So it's really just Boxster, right? And I mean, I haven't driven the newest Boxster. I've driven the Caymans, and they're very impressive, and I'm sure Boxster is very similar, and I mean, I did a quick drive in the Z4 M40i, and it was fantastic. I really loved it. I love everything about the Supra, and that's very similar, just without a roof. And so I really like the Z4s, and I'm hoping to do a full review on one someday, but BMW doesn't send me press cars, so it's one of those ones I have to wait for an owner to offer one, and I haven't had an owner offer one of those yet, but I'd love to review one at some point. And Luke says, I just saw an article from Motor Trend about an Acura CDX. Interesting. So is that one of the old names that I heard they're going to be, doing like a new HRV with Acura stuff on it, essentially, most likely. Maybe it'll be something different than that. But, if they call it the CDX, that would make a lot of sense. And interesting. Thanks for bringing up that name. That'd be cool. And Carlos, thanks for joining us. Is good evening, Matt. I hope the family's doing well. We're doing great. Thanks for joining in, Carlos. And so we have a bunch of others joining in here. Thanks for joining in, everyone. Jazz says, watched your Kona reviews. I am leaning towards purchasing one. Seems like you like the vehicle, especially the features of the Limited. Thank you as always for great reviews in the interior. Absolutely. Happy to help. That's why I do this channel, and I'm so happy that was helpful for you there. And yeah, Kona is a really good little crossover. And you've seen the video, so you already know all my thoughts. I don't need to regurgitate any of that stuff. But yeah, Kona's really a nice little vehicle, and it was a fun thing to run around in for the week. And let me see. Spy Harpy says, a shameless plug, but my NSX was reviewed head-to-head with a F360 manual on the Zygreen YouTube channel. Well, there you go. Anyone who'd like to see a really clean NSX, if you're a member, you already saw I featured his car this past week as the member car of the week. And so you'll be able to see it on video there against the 360, which should be really sweet. Yeah, sounds good. And I'll have to check that out myself. So I'm sure that was a fun thing to shoot. And let me see. So while we're waiting for other member questions, try and get some of the other non-member questions in. Noodle says, hey, Matt, have you gotten a chance to watch the Grand Tour Sand Job? Yes, we watched it on Friday night. Loved it. I was a little worried about how much I was going to cringe, because I personally would love to own an Aston Martin DB9 Volante, an F-Type, and honestly, even a Maserati, a Grand Cabrio, like one of those. And so seeing them all, get thrashed, was obviously not how I would treat those cars, but it was really fun. A fantastic show. I absolutely loved it. I'll be really sad to see them go with their final one next year. But man, that was definitely highly recommend. Definitely check it out. I also really loved the little opening studio segment that they did. It kind of felt like old Top Gear to me, and made me really wish they still did car reviews, because, man, I mean, that's what inspired me to do car reviews, was watching that stuff. And yeah, loved the Sand Job. Highly recommend. And let me see. Carlos says, I had no idea they were still making the Grand Tour. I'm going to need to catch up on episodes. Oh, man, you're missing out. Yeah, they've been doing one about once a year or so. Maybe there's been a few where it's been like twice a year, but yeah, they just do the travel specials now. So it's not like it used to be where it's kind of like a Top Gear takeoff. Now it's just the like epic travel specials. So many good ones. Yeah, you're in for a good time. They're like 2 hours long each, so you're gonna need a good amount of time to get caught up on those. But they are so good. Yeah, highly recommend all of them. Honestly, yeah, I can't think of a bad one. They're all really funny. And FR8 says, I really want to get the new Bronco 4-door with a hardtop, but I'm hearing the noise is awful and everyone is buying aftermarket. Is Ford fixing this? Should I wait for a Land Cruiser? Well, as far as the Bronco with a hardtop, so I had a media car back when they first came out with a hardtop, and it was fine. I mean, it's an off-road thing with a removable hardtop, so it's not going to be amazing or anything. But to me, it was more refined than a Wrangler, and that was kind of the main thing. Is I think they just in every way, at least as far as every way I can appreciate. Now, if you're doing rock crawling or something, maybe there's some minute differences where there's huge deficiencies or something, but to me, it seemed like the Bronco was basically better than the Wrangler in pretty much every single way, aside from now the Wrangler having the 392 version. But other than that, Bronco was definitely the one that I would rather live with. So I like the Bronco for sure. And as far as the noise being awful there, I mean, I know they had some issues with the production of the hardtops where they were flaking and all kinds of other stuff. I think that I heard that like most of that stuff has been worked out for the most part. Maybe there's still some issues. I wouldn't put it past Ford to still have lingering quality issues 3 years in or whatever. But I thought, and I would hope that by now it would be better if you're getting a 2024 or something. And then as far as the Land Cruiser is going to be very different. It just comes down to, do you want something that for one is going to be a hybrid, and then want something that's, it's not going to be as hardcore. It's not. It just isn't. And so it doesn't have removable roof, removable doors. It's going to be great off-road. I mean, I already reviewed the GX, and the Land Cruiser is the same kind of thing, just with a different engine pretty much, and obviously less refinement and stuff. But I mean, the GX rocks off-road. I mean, it is so much fun, so awesome. So, I mean, you can still do some really impressive stuff. You can definitely check out my GX review if you haven't already. There's an off-road segment you can jump to in the timestamps, and you can see what that thing does. It is impressive. I was really pretty mind blown with just how competent that vehicle is. So, I mean, it depends on just how much you're doing. But I mean, even if you're doing really demanding off-road work, I think the Land Cruiser is more than up for it. And based off of, again, my experience in the GX, which obviously is going to be nicer, we'll have to wait for the drives of the Land Cruiser. I think they're going to be later on this spring into the summer there. But, with those, I think, it's just going to be a really nice, a little more livable vehicle than a Bronco or a Wrangler. So I'd probably rather have the Land Cruiser, just knowing what I know about GX and how nice that drove. We will have to wait and see for the final verdict on that one. But Bronco is still good, but I think Land Cruiser would probably also hold its resale value maybe a little bit better, possibly too. I don't know. We'll see. But it's a tough decision. It'll come down to, again, exactly what it is you're looking for. Let me see. Luke says, I really want Toyota to make a Ford Maverick competitor. It sounds like they're working on something. We saw a concept, I think it was back in the fall at the Tokyo Mobility Show or whatever they call it now. And it was a pretty Americanized thing. It even was left-hand drive for a Tokyo show vehicle, which really should send a strong signal that, this is something probably meant for, Americans primarily. And so that probably gives us a pretty good preview of what we're going to see for a Maverick competitor. They're working on it. I mean, it's a money printer, and they know it. And I mean, Toyota's got such a rich heritage of doing really cheap, small, little affordable trucks that are, bulletproof. And so I think that, it's a natural fit for them. And so I think it's going to come sooner or later. I don't know how soon it's going to come, but I think that something like that is coming eventually. And Luke, while you're here, I also want to mention, I think I will be probably doing a Stuff I Saw Last Month video. He's said a few times here in the past that he loved those videos that I used to do a few years back. Since I haven't had a press vehicle for several weeks now, I've been driving the Bullet everywhere, and I always run the dash cam on that, and I've been seeing some interesting stuff. I actually saw someone get T-boned the other day. I saw there was a guy in an STI that tried to street race me in the Bullet about a week or so ago. And there's a few other things. I've been seeing some interesting stuff that might be worthy of a monthly little roundup. So stay tuned for that, Luke. I probably won't do it, most months, but just figured it might be a fun little video to throw up, here sometime in early March. So, so yeah, I figured you'd be looking forward to that. And let me see other questions here. So Joe says, I just realized that the Outback Wilderness basically has the WRX engine. Think they'll bring that to the Crosstrek. Thoughts about that in general? I think it would be really cool. So yes, the only thing that I don't love about that powertrain combo is the CVT it's connected to. It is a really bad CVT experience. And you can watch, I reviewed an Outback Wilderness, so you can check that out with my impressions on that motor in real time. And people have been living with it in the Ascent as well. It's the same combo there. Yeah, so in Outback XT has also had that for a while too. And it's a fine powertrain combo. The only thing is, it's just the throttle, the way they calibrated the throttle with that CVT. So CVTs with Subaru are a little rubber bandy still. It's still a little mushy. And then they added in weird throttle response. So in my video, the way I likened it was basically, if you were driving, that combo with an automatic, it feels like your foot is sitting on a partially deflated balloon that is then connected to the throttle. And that is like a pretty accurate representation of like your throttle input and then like what happens. It's like you push it in and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, okay, we'll get the CVT to rev up. And then, okay, now the turbo kicks in and then the CVT has to back off because the turbo's pulling up. And then you're like, well, I still want to keep going. And it's this whole like mismatched. I mean, I guess you can learn to live with anything. But to me, it's just horribly calibrated. I mean, lots of people driving around, Subaru Ascent owners live with it. And, there doesn't seem to be an uproar about it. So maybe I'm nitpicking, but I just hated the way it was set up. Test drive one for sure if you're considering it. It's a cool idea in theory. And if they had it with a manual, I'd say absolutely it's going to be awesome. And in the Crosstrek, I could see that potentially having a manual for that motor since, especially if they just port over the WRX version, and the fact that Crosstrek owners in the past have wanted manuals, even if it's not in large numbers, I could see, it's still probably not a very good chance of it happening, but a slightly better chance there in the Crosstrek. And it sounds like obviously we already know there's a Crosstrek Wilderness, but a Crosstrek Wilderness XT or something possibly someday. There's been rumors about that, but, and I think it would make sense for Subaru to do, but Subaru often doesn't like doing things that make sense, in my opinion. So it's one of those low-hanging fruit that's like right there, like people would line up for it, and then Subaru just doesn't do it for whatever reason. So yeah, it would be really cool. And the motors, it sounds promising. Unfortunately, in reality, it's just a little bit of a letdown, in my opinion, personally. But definitely test drive one, check it out for yourself. You might love it, and might be, exactly what you're looking for if you want, WRX power. With the Wilderness kind of functionality there in the Outback, it definitely, a lot of people really love the Outback Wilderness, and it's still a fun vehicle, once you learn to live with and deal with that. But, it's, it's just not ideal. And Carla said, I like how you started to add the short video form questions from the live streams of the channel. Have you seen those videos help the channel? So they're not getting a ton of views, but what I've been seeing is that they have really good positive feedback, which is important to me, even if the algorithm doesn't care about that. Like, to me, like, that's telling me that at least one, I'm not annoying people, and two, I'm doing something that some people find value in. And so that's been encouraging. Also, when I look at the back end and the analytics, the retention for those videos is really good. So, typically with YouTube, for anyone who doesn't, see the behind the scenes of YouTube, with most YouTube videos, you have an enormous drop off of people that you lose in the first 30 seconds. Like, the graph for most YouTube videos is like the video starts and then it goes, and then like you have like the remnants of the people that last like after that, and that's it. And so usually it's a pretty big drop off. You lose like half of your audience in the first 30 seconds typically. And that's typical for most of my videos as well. People are like, oh, look at this idiot, and then they immediately click away. But the few people that stick around are the ones that you really help the video the most, because YouTube sees that is someone who's really interested in the video, and then they'll recommend that video to more people and stuff. So anyway, getting to the live clips, those have like fantastic retention, and YouTube actually compares it to the last 365 days of videos that I've posted. And all of those live stream clips are like the top performing retention videos out of everything in the past year. So when people click on those, they watch it like a lot of it, like most of the way through. And so that should certainly help the algorithm. And I'm starting to see some promising potential signs that those little clips are helping the channel, and that the daily uploads I've been doing might be actually kind of boosting other things slightly as well. So I'm going to keep doing it. It's really easy to do those. And I think that is really valuable because we have so many good conversations and so many great questions that get answered in these live streams that just get buried in a, video that's titled live car chat that's 2 hours long, and no one's going to ever find those questions and those answers aside from the handful of people that actually watch these all the way through, which I commend anyone who sits through the whole 2 hour upload who misses these originally. Yeah, but there's not very many people that do that. So I think it makes a ton of sense. And so I'm going to keep doing them, especially as long as, I get more, positive feedback on it. And as long as it looks like the numbers of everything are good. I mean, I'd like to see them get more views, but, even if it's just a filler video to get me to the next car review or the next weekly update and just keep those daily uploads going for the algorithm, then I think it, serves its purpose there. But I think they do have some value to some people. So I'm going to keep doing them for sure. And I'm really happy I found something like that sets me apart, I think, a little bit from most other car channels that, don't do that. And Austin, thank you so much for the super chat, your third super chat on the channel here. And so Austin says, hey, Matt, opinion on F66 Mini so far. Okay, I need to quickly Google F66 because I don't know. There's the F. Is that the newest? Is that the current generation, not the brand new one that just came out? If you want to quickly comment, I'll keep an eye out for that. But minis in general, the newest ones are really reliable. The R53s, R56s definitely had a lot of issues. I'd stay away from those unless you are mechanically inclined or have a high risk tolerance for unreliability. But otherwise, the newer ones seem to be really solid. I've really liked them on paper standpoint. I've never reviewed the newest gen Cooper, so I can't personally say from experience what I think about them. The brand new one also seems pretty promising aside from not having a manual. So I like them. We will have to see. Okay, newest 4th gen just announced ice powered one. Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, I think they look great. I talked about it in my weekly update 2 weeks ago. I think that they're just a nice evolution. I like the interior. It's really cool. They have their mini experience system or whatever they call it there on the inside. And nice little power boost. Again, just no manual. That's the biggest downside. And as someone who loves a manual, that, is definitely a wet blanket on the reveal for me. But other than that, I think it's, going to be a solid little car. And I'm glad they're keeping it around because I think city cars are very underappreciated. And I think they're just a ton of fun. So hoping to try one out here at some point for sure. And thank you so much for the super chat again. And let me see. So Luke says, I got gifted a membership that expires February 28th. Does it renew automatically? Not unless you have already been a member, but no, gift memberships, they just expire and you go back to being a non-member unless you opt in. And then you have to sign up and I guess give them your credit card or whatever it is, that YouTube does. Or if you have YouTube Premium, it might be able to share with that or something as far as payment goes. But no, you have to manually go in and make sure that you want to keep going. Otherwise, YouTube won't just take your money and assume you want to keep being a member with those gifts. They just expire if you don't keep that up. And Zachary says, following up on the live stream clips, I've enjoyed them. Thanks for featuring my question about the 25K family sedan last week. Absolutely. It was a great question. And obviously a very common question a lot of people have. So that's why I thought it was a great one to repost there. And so thank you for the great questions, Zachary. And Raphael says, I've been enjoying the single question videos too. I'm really happy to hear that. Thanks, Raphael. And Cam Jam says, I was excited about my question as a video, made my entire week. Well, that's awesome. I'm so glad. That's another cool perk is being able to feature, the questions of you guys and give you guys a little shout out there in the videos as well. So it's good all around. I'm so happy that they've gone over so well. And MBKN says, sup, Matt, I'm getting my Kona over to you, but trying to get some good picks for you to use. Sounds good. Yeah, I appreciate it. And I I got some more submissions here for Member Car of the Week too that just came in. So we got another good one to post up tomorrow. And yeah, we also have a couple other members. B. Mitchell's got a bunch of cars that we'll also get through his collection here little by little as well. But he sent me all the cars he has and some very interesting and quirky stuff too there. So yeah, stay tuned for another one of those tomorrow. But Carlos says, I saw a Fisker Ocean. Funny enough, I just saw my first Fisker Ocean in Pittsburgh today as well. He said, yeah, the new SUV completely threw me off because I didn't even know that they're selling them already. It looked really unique. Yeah, I saw one today as well, and I laughed out loud whenever I saw it drive by because, man, I read a rundown this week. It was on Autoblog of all the issues and the lawsuits that owners are presenting against Fisker. It is like real bad. Like, there's like early tech adopter stuff. And like, they have bugs and, whenever like the Mach-E came out, Teslas came out, like, they have some initial bugs and stuff that get worked out. We're seeing this in lifetime with, all the GM stuff and, they're, the Blazers turning into bricks because of the infotainment stuff not working. And, this is something that happens even with mainstream companies. But man, the Fisker is bad. I mean, I won't go into the whole article. You can just Google Autoblog Fisker Ocean issues or something like that if you want to read it. But general consensus, so it has locked some people in the car. One person was stuck in their car on a hot day and it wouldn't open up until they manually had to like go through the back doors or something. They have lost power. Even the Fisker's own wife, she was one of the first people to get one, obviously. She was driving down the highway and hers lost power. Apparently a bunch of them lost power. They say supposedly there's some diagnostic equipment that was installed in some of those early vehicles, and that was what was causing the issue. But then there's been other customers that said, nope, I've had the same issue. The brakes, the regen brakes don't work. So the friction brakes will still work, but the regen brakes just don't. And they're like, well, what's the point of having an EV if I can't like do regen braking? Like that really helps your efficiency. So regen braking doesn't work. And there's been a bunch of other things too that are smaller, but those are like the main like standout ones of like, it's just like leaving people stranded. And some of these issues have happened like multiple issues of the same owner. So like, I think the one person that got locked into their vehicle, also got locked out of their vehicle and then also got stranded on the side of the highway with their vehicle. Like, I'm like, man, I kind of, was just like nervous about those in general anyway. But like the fact that like, that people still went for it. Again, everyone's risk tolerances are different, but like personally, I think you'd have to be crazy to get a Fisker Ocean. Like you could give me one for free and I wouldn't want it because I wouldn't want to risk my well-being, my family's well-being, getting stuck in a car, getting, locked out of a car. I mean, it's just like, no thanks. Don't want to touch that with a 10-foot pole. I think that is like outranked the VinFast as far as like vehicles that I would be terrified to even be, remotely close to for all those reasons. So yeah, not trying to rain on Fisker's parade here, but I would definitely give them a lot of leeway and let them work out all the issues for a few years before I would, even want to test drive one. I wouldn't even want to, like I said, I don't even want to drive one, let alone own one. So best of luck to all those out there who signed up for that. But yeah, not for me. Kevin, thank you so much for the super chat. He says, most fun new NA car under 50,000. That's a good question. So under 50, naturally aspirated, it's got to be, I mean, I think it's just either got to be Miata, GR86, BRZ. I think those are really the most fun, especially most fun per dollar. But I'm trying to go more expensive than that to get up to your $50,000 cap. But everything else that's more expensive is going to, have a turbo on it typically. So, I mean, I guess you could argue you can probably still get a Mustang for under 50. And Mustang's fun in a different way. It's just not as dynamic of a sports car as the Miata and the GR86 and the BRZ. But if you want more of a grand tour that also you can get with an awesome V8 for under 50, I'd say Mustang is probably going to be the top one outside of those three. But I mean, I don't think there's anything else, to be totally honest, as far as I'm assuming you're saying new NA stuff. So nothing used. So as far as new, unless there's something that I'm forgetting, yeah, with the Camaro and the Challenger going away and all that, I would say it's got to be Mustang, GR86, Miata. And between those, I think Miata is the most fun per dollar, especially if you appreciate the roof off kind of thing. But also, if you don't need the V8 and you don't need the extra power, save yourself the 20 grand, just get yourself a BRZ or G86 and don't bother with the Mustang, to be totally honest. They're fun. Obviously, I love one. I have one. I love it. It's great, but if you don't need that much power or that much comfort, I think that you're better off with one of those other three. And thank you so much for the super chat. And PK says, for redesigning cars, is it better to redesign everything at once or do it periodically? Well, I think that the way most companies have kind of agreed it makes the most sense to do it is to, do a big change every 5 to 6 years, roughly, do a refresh roughly 3 years in. And that keeps it fresh enough. And that's typically, the way that it seems like is the most efficient, the best way from a financial standpoint, while still accounting for customer demands. That people don't want something that looks super old and outdated. People want something fresh, and that gets them into the showroom. And so, you need to have that fresh look. And so, I think that is typically, the better way to do things. Obviously different companies, do different strategies with, like Tesla, letting stuff age forever before they change designs. And other companies have had success with that too. We see, the Charger and the Challenger not changing for, a long time. And it had a lot of success. You see the same thing with 4Runner, Tacoma, a lot of that Toyota stuff that, runs 10 years before they bother really doing any kind of changes, so, there's others that, it depends on the market and the type of car and the brand and what people expect from the brand and what they want from the brand. So there's differences there for sure. I don't think there's really technically a better way to do it. There's no objective like this is the best way. It's really going to come down to, all those different demands. And Double Strike says, hey, Matt, I don't know what I came down with, but 6 since Thursday, and all the usual tests are negative. If I die, I'll leave you and Beth the car. Well, thanks. I appreciate it. I hope you feel better soon, though. That's weird. Yeah. It sounds like there's still a bunch of sicknesses, still going on. It's still, that respiratory season of, everything flu and norovirus and all that, just, all kinds of everything. So, hope you feel better soon, and sorry to hear about the sickness there. But we'll get something set up once you're feeling better. Take your time and let me know when you're feeling better, and we'll get a review of your Taycan Turbo going here at some point soon. And let me see. Carlos also says, twins are the Miata for sure. And I see Mr. 705 says, in the market for a truck, I wanted a small truck, GMC Canyon or the new Tacoma, but they are hard to get, and all my local dealers have hundreds of full-size Chevys and GMC 1500s, and they have big discounts. Yeah, that's tough to argue with. That is, and, I've been seeing a lot of people complaining about that with Tacoma pricing and the pricing for all these mid-size trucks. It is really close, to full-size trucks, and especially if you can get those discounts and you don't need the smaller size. If you can get a bigger truck and you don't care, you're not really going to save that much fuel anyway. So if you don't mind the bigger size, just get the bigger truck. If it's basically the same price, that, you have the extra space and all that, it's a much more livable backseat if you plan on using a backseat. And especially if it's going to be a nightmare trying to get a Tacoma or even a Canyon. I actually saw a Canyon Denali for the first time today on the road outside of the ones that I've reviewed, but first one in Pittsburgh here. But if there's discounts on all the full-size stuff, I think it makes sense to just, get the full size. And Strass Edge, thank you so much for the super chat. He says, hi, Matt, I'm headed to the Dallas Auto Show next week. I know they're not known for reveals, but anything cool to look out for from the past month's shows? There's been a lot of good stuff, that's been coming out here, and a lot of stuff that's not even been shown at shows that, like Stellantis skipped shows. So, like, you get to see all the new Ram stuff. The Ram Charger, the Ram Rev, and all those types of things are going to be there. I'm assuming they'll have the new 1500 there as well for you to poke around and check that out, the refreshed one. I think is Dallas, I guess the Dallas Auto Show is not the same. There's the Texas State Fair. I know some of the, truck companies do some of their debuts there, but other than that, it's just going to come down to what kind of cars you're into. Actually, the Pittsburgh Auto Show was just this past weekend, and a couple of my buddies that went were letting me know about some of the vehicles that were there, and it was actually like a pretty decent turnout. They had some pretty cool stuff. So yeah, it sounds like, you'll hopefully, if Dallas is at least as good as Pittsburgh, which is probably a very low bar. So I'm sure Dallas will be way better as far as car selection. But I think like even Pittsburgh had like the ID Buzz, which is kind of fun to see and something that, isn't on the roads yet. So you can actually see something that you haven't seen yet and that you'll, won't be seeing for probably another at least 6 months, if not more. So there's some futuristic stuff like that sometimes you can see. It's always tough to say. Some of these car shows, they send some vehicles to some shows and not to others, and so it's always kind of a surprise. So hopefully it's a good one there. But yeah, I'm trying to think of any other stuff. I mean, you can see, there's the rundown. Someone just did a Chicago auto show, all the coverage from that, which was also kind of didn't have very many reveals. But, if you see all the coverage there, I can give you some ideas of what to expect at Dallas as well. But I hope you have a great time. And thank you so much for the super chat. Let me see other member questions here. So, and Luke's saying about the Frontier there for Mr. 705 as well. And Hugo says, hey, man, hopefully you had a great weekend. Have you ever thought on reviewing a Saturn Sky Redline? I think those are fun little roadsters. I would love to review one. They are extremely rare, as is the Solstice and everything. And so I would love to review any of those. And I've never actually had anyone offer me one. And I don't think they've ever come through any of the dealerships that I've worked with. But yes, the second I get an opportunity to review a Saturn Sky Redline, as long as it's within a reasonable driving distance, I desperately want to review one of those. And I'm hoping to actually do a lot more privately owned vehicles because I don't actually have any press vehicles scheduled. This is the longest I've gone without press vehicles in probably since I started doing press vehicles. Honestly, I haven't had a press vehicle for at least maybe 3 weeks now or so, and I'm not having anything until like the end of March. So I got another month here, almost over a month. I have a bunch of stuff already in like a backlog, and I have one trip I'll be doing next month. But aside from that, like I'm going to be doing all used stuff for the month of March pretty much. So for those of you who love the used car reviews, that's going to be great. I'm also going to try and get in the bullet and go meet up with some people and do some privately owned reviews. So March will kind of feel like old school Super Dorks fan vibes with the kind of content I'll be putting out as far as the reviews. So stay tuned for that. But yeah, so gonna be doing some fun stuff. No Saturn Sky Redlines, unfortunately, but hopefully some fun stuff as well. And Carlos says the GR86 is tons of fun. I have an intake, AWE exhaust, and it's just a joy to drive. Brings a smile to my face every time I drive it. There you go. Best endorsement you can hear from someone. I totally agree. They're fantastic fun. Carlos says, is Toyota one of the few companies that does a new gen every 15 years? Exactly. Absolutely. And Louis says, flu's going around. Definitely is. Yeah, it's another one of those peaks that does, these little roller coaster kind of dips and then comes back up and down. So, yeah, flu's been going pretty strong this year. And Luke says, I think consistency is key. GM failed at that with the Cavalier Cobalt Cruise. Instead of steadily improving, they just said, oh, that wasn't good, and scrapped the designs instead of improving over time. Yeah, as far as the redesigns goes, I think, yeah, that sometimes it makes sense to stick with something. And, it's hard to predict the future, though, with some of this stuff. But, like, yeah, so there was a big opinion piece I just read this week on GM and how, like, they're so bad at, like, dropping the ball sometimes when they have greatness. Like, GM had the Volt, which was a plug-in hybrid years ago, and people loved it, but it wasn't enough of a commercial success, I guess, for them to keep it around. And now, what are the hottest selling vehicles out there? Hybrids and plug-in hybrids. And GM had hybrid tech. They were doing hybrid Tahoes back in 2008, and then they abandoned it. And gas was cheap, and it was the muscle car years and all that stuff here over the past decade. But like if they would have just kept that stuff around like Toyota did all those years, then they'd be in the same great place Toyota is right now. Toyota is primed to take off like a rocket this year with everything they have basically being available on a hybrid. And what does everyone want? A hybrid right now. So like, man, if I was like one of those executives at Toyota right now, it'd be like lighting the cigars with $100 bills because like they're gonna print money like no other this year. It's gonna be crazy. But it's just a bummer that GM just didn't stick with. They had good ideas, just they were timed wrong, or they just didn't have the guts to stick with them. And we're seeing them do it again with Bolt. What does everyone want right now? A sub $30,000 electric vehicle. What does GM have? or had that they just killed, the Bolt, a vehicle that was under 30 grand. It was a nice little vehicle. I reviewed it last year. That's exactly what the EV buyers want. They were selling super hotly right towards the end there. And then GM goes and kills it to build $100,000 Silverado EVs that supposedly a bunch of people want. Will they actually want it? Will they actually be able to get them? Can GM figure out how to screw them together with the Ultium bottlenecks we've seen? I don't know, but it's just like, I think the one quote from the opinion piece I loved is like, they said, can GM get out of their own way to succeed, or will they, just trip over their own shoes again? It's like, it's so painful because they're so close to greatness so many times, and sometimes they do achieve greatness, but there's so many times where they just really are this close, and then they just strike out. But anyway, Carla said, did you see the Car Confections new Santa Fe needed a new transmission after only 27 miles on it? Hopefully that's a one-off issue and not a more widespread problem. Yes, I did see that. I'm glad that they posted a video so that I can talk about it, because I was on the Ram 1500 launch this past week. I didn't post on social media about it because I just honestly was so busy on that drive that I didn't have time to take pictures. I was just like, that was interesting the way I set it up for my wave of that. But anyway, so I was on the same wave as Mason and Drew. And so we were talking over dinner about their Santa Fe, and like, are you guys going to post a video about it? And like, yeah, we got to, say what's going on with it. That's the dual clutch that had some issues already in the Sorento, and it's had some issues, I think, in a few of the other vehicles. I think it was actually maybe Car and Driver that their Sorento had the transmission blow up on it or something. I can't remember, but that dual clutch has had some issues, it seems. I was hoping that maybe that had been in the past at this point after a few years of production, but sounds like it's not. I mean, at 27 miles, I have to think that's a manufacturing issue. And, because typically if it's something that's like a flawed, like, failure point that's common, that would be something you'd see later on. When it's that soon, it's almost certainly someone screwed something up. I mean, it made it 27 miles, but, clearly I think something was just a little off with that one that, snuck through the quality control checks or something. So I'm confident that that's not a widespread issue, and it's just that transmission has been known to be a little fluky for a few unlucky people. So I'm hoping that it's mostly fine, but we will see. But yeah, that was crazy, and I'm like, well, that's gonna definitely be a good video for you guys, being like, hey, look, we just bought a brand new Santa Fe, and now it's in the shop. So I feel for them, but they always have press cars and stuff, so it's not like they're out of car really or anything. It'll be great for content, but hopefully it does treat them well, and they're able to do some more stuff with it down the road. But not a good look for Hyundai either. That, like, of all the people to get the faulty Santa Fe, it's the people that have like one of the fastest growing audiences as far as car audiences on YouTube right now. And great guys, by the way. I've been on a lot of the same waves as them for so many of these launches recently, and it's really been great to get to know them better here over the past year or so. And Tumbling Mustard, which I think is Zachary as well. I guess you must have changed your username there. Somebody said, I've been looking at the CX-5. It seems like in your initial review you were actually disappointed in the turbo's performance. Are the turbo trims worth it? Yeah, so the turbo one, I think that was like the first thing I think they did that got the turbo. It was like that in the Mazda 6 way back when, that had it in the first iteration of it. My disappointment was primarily just the weight, because the regular CX-5 just handles so well. And then you put the turbo on, and just for me, the way that it just felt weightier, just felt like it wasn't as lively of a handler. So that was a disappointment. And also the way that they kind of held back boost. It wasn't the best either. I think they've tuned that motor a little bit better recently. It seems like now power comes on a little stronger, a little lower in the RPMs, and just feels a little punchier. They've also given it, a tiny little power bump of, I think, like 10 horsepower since that initial iteration, which isn't going to make much of a difference. But I think it's just the tuning changes have helped. I'd like to retry another CX-5 turbo and see, how it feels now looking on, 5 years later or whatever. Because, I think that now that I've experienced all the other, vehicles that have that same motor, I do really like that motor. It's a really strong motor. It feels great. And with the 6-speed auto, it actually is pretty, straightforward. It's, it's nice to just have a regular automatic and all that. So I really like the package. And if you're not looking for, the sportiest handling crossover, out there, I think it's going to be really good. Yeah, I really like it. But yeah, I was disappointed initially, and I need to retry it again and see, because also back then, there was, everything was a little bit lighter. Now things have gotten so much heavier, and you have all these, the way things have changed honestly so fast in the past 5 years. I probably now would like it better than I did back then. But I definitely need to revisit that one for sure, and get some updated impressions on that. But as far as, are they worth it, that's going to come down to, how badly you want the extra power. It's punchy, but to be totally honest, the regular CX-5 is really nice and punchy already. I think it's slightly punchier than most of the other competitors, and it's one of the few that has a regular automatic. It handles even better, I think, without the turbo and all that. So I really like the non-turbo one. So if you don't really need to have that extra punch, I think regular one's going to be totally fine. And I'm surrounded by CX-5s. My neighbor across the street has one. My next door neighbor has one. My sister owns one. And they're all non-turbos, and they all seem to be totally happy with them. Obviously, again, everyone's different. So just because they're happy with it doesn't mean you will be. But I think that they're solid little vehicles, even without the turbo. So it just comes down to how badly you want that. Hopefully that helps you a little bit. And thanks for the question. Carlos says, are you declining cars, or is it just low inventory on press vehicles? As far as the schedule, I'm declining stuff. I'm declining more stuff this year. I mean, they could have kept me going nonstop, and I could have a car every week the entire year if I just said yes to everything. It's just that I say, like, yeah, I don't want stuff. Like, there's been a lot of stuff. That they were like, we can put you in this, this, and this. And I'm like, I either already did that vehicle last year or the year before, and I don't want to do repeat stuff. I'd rather go out and, film new stuff that I haven't done before, or it's just stuff that I just am not confident is going to do well. Like, they want to send me a Polestar 2, a while back, and I'm like, I don't know. And they want to send me like the refreshed the refreshed Volvo XC40 Recharge. And I'm like, the last one I reviewed got like 10,000 views. And I mean, I liked it. It was great. It's a 400 horsepower in this little cutesy soccer mom, like, little crossover. It's like hilarious. Like, I would love to take one of those to a drag strip and just like run the table on everyone all night. Because you do like, 4 seconds there to 60s and 400 horsepower in this little thing that no one would ever guess. Even car people, most people have no clue they're that fast. So I mean, like, that's one I'd love to personally take, but I just, looking at the views, I'm like, no one is going to watch this. And I got to be smart with my time this year. And it makes me a pain in the butt to these schedulers that are trying to, schedule cars for me. But I'm like, look, and it also does hurt some stuff. Like, there's, for example, a TLX Type S, the refreshed one, waiting for me that I could review, but I needed other cars to link to that one. So like, they couldn't get it to me until, a few weeks from now or whatever. But in order to keep the rotation of cars going, I would have had to accept 3 or 4 cars that would have been a waste of time for me. So instead, like, I'm not going to get the TLX Type S now until probably April or May. But that's just, I'm not going to waste my time reviewing cars that no one's going to watch. And so if that means that a car like the TLX Type S, which, like, the last one I reviewed got 200,000 views, like, that's a high priority car for me. I want to get back into that with, the little tweaks they've made to it. But I'm not going to, review 3 duds, on the channel just to get that one good one and hope that it repeats the same success as the last time, which is, highly unlikely to happen anyway. So yeah, I'm saying no to more stuff, and it's what I got to do. I think, I've really just realized, and it's really becoming more and more clear to me that I need to just not compete with the other channels out there, because I can't compete. And I've kind of just come to the realization that I'm never going to be able to compete on the press trips, on the press cars. And, I'm never going to be the first. I'm never going to have, the most production value. I'm never going to be, able to compete on those levels. And so if everyone's going to zig, I'm going to zag. And that means going and doing the used stuff. And sure, I'll take press vehicles. I'll do press trips whenever I think it's something that I think has a decent chance of succeeding as far as views. But otherwise, like, the channel peaked right around when I actually started doing press trips, and right whenever, I was really going heavy into the press cars. And that's like when the channel peaked and started declining ever since then. And I think that, I got to just go back and do more used stuff. I get so much great feedback on those used videos. They do really good views residually. They don't like blow up immediately because it's not the hot new car, but the search volume on that stuff is great. And people are always searching for, all these off-lease BMWs and things like that. And so I'm just good this year. I'm not going to compete. I'm not going to try and be the first person with a press vehicle. I'm going to do, embargoed stuff and, press trips, here and there, but I'm not competing anymore because I've given up hope of ever breaking through. I'm not going to ever, get the kind of success that you see on the other channels, and that's okay. I'm going to be me and go back to my roots, which was always reviewing the awesome cars you guys have offered me, the awesome used stuff that I can get my hands on, and here and there doing a new car whenever it's something that's cool. But I'm really just getting picky, and I think that's hopefully going to be the right choice. We'll see what happens. But yeah, I got to just do something different because it's easy to just say, sure, I'll take whatever press car you send me. And they show up in the driveway with a sparkly washed car with a full tank of gas. And it's easy. And I think it's been comfortable. It's been easy. It's very prestigious, and it's the natural evolution. You would think, okay, I started doing little dealership cars and then I graduated up to press trips and press vehicles. And that, it seems like the next logical step on a, career spectrum. But I think to me, is actually probably the wrong move because that was, then I just was competing with all the big top dogs, and I wasn't the top dog, and I'm never going to be the top dog. And so it was kind of, just giving up on what I had going that was really good and substituting it for something that was just a mediocre competitor to all the big stuff out there. So, so that's kind of been why I'm, been kind of hopefully changing track. And like I said, we'll see. March will be really interesting with just nothing but used stuff pretty much. I'll be doing the new Santa Fe actually in March. I'll be posting that as well. But other than that one, everything will be a used vehicle, and it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. Anyway, sorry for the long-winded tangent there, but just to give you guys a behind-the-scenes update here. And Ace says it's a very rational approach. Yeah, I hope it works out. We'll see. Let me see. Hugo says, I'm moving to South Carolina in a month, so we need to make plans so you can review my Z3. Okay. Well, thanks for the info. Yeah, definitely send me another follow-up message, and we will try to get that done before you move. Hopefully it won't be too hectic there right before you move. But yeah, I think I should be able to probably squeeze something in here before April. So definitely, send me a message. We'll try and reconnect here and get something figured out. And good luck with the move as well. And Luke says, hopefully in this next month, we can meet up for my 07 Accord. It's getting state inspection next week, so it should be all safe and ready to roll. Sounds great. Thanks, Luke. Yeah, that was another one. 07 Accord, nothing crazy, but a ton of search volume. And I look on YouTube, a ton of people searching for 07 Accords. And so I'm like, that's something I need to review. So no one else is reviewing that. I'm going to review that. And again, do the thing that no one else is doing and go where there is no competition. Raphael says, Matt, what did you do to make everyone mad and stop the press vehicles? Yeah, definitely didn't make anyone mad, just getting picky. Trucking Car Guy says, hey, all, dealing with family. Well, hope everything works out. And thanks for stopping by, Trucking Car Guy. And sorry to hear about the troubles or whatever's going on there. And W. Mitchell says, Ford stuck with hybrids, although they didn't sell too well. But Ford's another one. They stuck with them, and I think it does make sense. I think I actually saw that Escape hybrid is now kind of on an uptrend, and we see hybrid Maverick is wildly popular. So I think that, Ford, they were a little, 1 foot in, 1 foot out with hybrids, I think, but they did stick with them. And, I think we're seeing they have a great position now with the F-150 hybrids and all that. And, I think hopefully it'll, work out for them, and they'll be able to also kind of have a multi-pronged approach, which it's so funny how Toyota got so much crap for that a few years ago when everyone was like, oh, we're going to be all electric, really soon. And then Toyota's like, we're going to do a multi-pronged approach because there's different needs for different parts of the country and different people. But they got so much crap for that. And they had to backpedal and be like, oh, we're still doing electric stuff too. And here's the BZ4X and stuff. But I said back then Toyota was right all along, and I think that's aged very well. So Toyota's the biggest car company right in the world, or one of the biggest ones, and they know what they're doing. And I think everyone was should have just been following their lead, honestly. Anyway, Cam Jam says, to elaborate on my manual hatch question, I would only be driving passengers occasionally and would like some guts. So I think the Mazda 3 manual is the one for me. Still considering the Civic, though. Yeah, well, if you'd like the extra punch there, and in the passenger situation isn't that bad in the Mazda 3. It's, we're not talking about a car from 10 years ago that's really squished. it's livable. It's fine. So if you're only doing that occasionally, absolutely Mazda 3 sounds like the best one for you there, Cam Jam. So hopefully you're able to grab one of those and they're not too hard to find. And Daniel says you should do an interview with the owner of Harrison Auto Sales. It'd be fascinating to hear from your friend on what it's like to run a car lot. That's a really cool idea. He's a very reserved guy who doesn't really love the limelight, to be totally honest. So, you know, that would, yeah, I don't know how much he would be up for talking, about that. It's something I'll certainly run past him though, because that would be a very interesting video. You're right, and if he'd be open to that, that'd be something be really, really cool to do a little behind the scenes video on. That kind of stuff's always a gamble views wise, but I mean, I'd be more than happy to tell his story if that was something that he'd like to do. But I mean, it's he's just one of these hardworking guys who's been doing it, really his whole life. No college degree, no nothing. He just learned, from a mentor and was able to kind of just, do stuff, little by little until he was able to open up his own car lot. And it's really just one of those like from the ground up, bootstrap kind of thing. And getting to where he is today, where now he's, very successful. He's, got a comfortable life for himself and he worked hard for it, but he's the guy that's out there at 6 a.m. plowing the lot whenever it gets covered with snow to make sure that it's clear there for open. And, he's the guy still going and checking out the trade-ins and checking out the cars he's going to buy, and he's going to the auction every week, and he's hands-on. He's not just sitting back and having everyone else do the work for him. So it's he's really in it, and it's been very, very awesome to see, and happy for all the success he's had. He's super, super nice guy, and I wouldn't be where I am today if it wasn't for him. So I'd be more than happy to shine the light on him if that was something he'd be open to. But he's, like I said, he's more reserved, so I'm not sure if he'd be up for that, but it'd be fascinating for sure. And Cars Tech Wood said, which band/artist would you and Beth go see in concert who is currently touring if you could get an eye away from the baby? We actually brought the baby with us to last year. We went to the Jonas Brothers, which is one of Beth's favorite bands. And so we saw them when they came into town here, and they put on a great show. And that was really good. And I think, is there one other one? That might be the only, I think that was her first concert. For our daughter, but I mean that's one of the top ones. I would also, One Republic's one of my favorite bands, so I'd probably try and do that if they were touring, but I don't think they're touring anywhere near or even I don't even think they're in North America right now for tours. But there's a bunch of bands that we all like individually as well that would be cool to see. But I won't go into my whole music because it's very obscure with I'm all over the place with bands and musicians that I like, and same goes for Beth. But yeah, the Jonas Brothers is definitely one of our mutual favorites that we were able to actually go to last year. And Double Strike Photo says, nice work on being more selective, Matt. You only have so much time. Absolutely. And that's been very apparent, especially now being a dad and all that. I'm even more selective with my time and what I spend it on than before. And PK says, what types of cars get good views? On this channel, typically, most of you, it seems like affordable, sporty stuff. If it's under 50 grand and it's fun and it's fast or interesting, or even if it's just relatable, some of my regular vehicles under 50 grand or so just seem to do pretty well too. So it's mostly just that stuff, but most of the hot compact hot import kind of stuff is really, I think, the stuff that typically does the best most of the time. Carlos says, off topic, but I wish FCA would have sent the Hellcat with the last hurrah and put it on the Pacifica. It would have been so funny seeing that smoke much faster and sportier vehicles. I agree. That would have been amazing. And yeah, I think there was a tuner that actually has put one in, so it fits somehow. Probably not in a crash test approved way, but it would have been fun to see them do that for sure. They can't even fit the Hellcat motor in the Wrangler. That's why they didn't do that, because they said if the extra stuff needed for the blower and all that somehow was going to need them to remove the bumper beam to order to make it fit. So you'd have no crumple zone if they actually were able to do that. Now, obviously, aftermarket companies have no problem selling you a vehicle with no crumple zones and saying you're on your own if you crash. But obviously FCA can't do that. So I think that's probably been the big holdup there too. But it would have been hilarious fun if they would have found a way to do it or do anything I don't mean they could have even gotten creative and done like the JDM vans from the 90s and like put like a mid-engine thing and dropped it in the stow and go seating area and made it like a 2-seater. Done something crazy like that. At least as a SEMA build would have been fun. And CB says you should do more used car reviews. Not nearly as many reviewers are doing that. Definitely, that's why I'm doing that, because it's just no other people really are. And I think especially these days with, everything being so expensive, people really being more financially strapped, I think, than ever before in a lot of ways for a lot of people. It's also just a need that's underserved. People are sick of seeing $50,000 cars even, and they're seeing the average new car price being 40 grand and being like, that's insane. So like when every new car that I'm getting is, mostly stuff over $30,000 and most of it way even beyond that, the reliability goes out the window too. And I know that I'm a very kind of off the cuff, everyday kind of person. And I feel like a lot of my viewers are as well. And so that's why I need to keep the vehicles relatable. And so it's almost like, I think from a necessity standpoint of like, I can't review as many new cars anymore because I'm just in la la land with, these cars that none of us are ever going to buy or afford or anything like that. And, so it's like, well, I guess if I'm only going to review stuff that, most people can actually afford, then I'm going to have to go used. And that's what most people are doing as far as car buying too, is saying, well, guess I'm going used, or I'm going to go and get a giant loan for, a super long period and all that, because that's the only way you can afford these $40,000 cars with any kind of reasonable payment. So, it's why I'm very passionate about, helping everyone find a car they'll love, not just, the upper middle class or, the millionaires, but to help, regular people find a car they'll love. And along the way, I won't say no to a sweet sports car or some, exotic thing if I can get my hands on it. It's not an everything or nothing kind of approach, but, I definitely want to just try and, help every person out there. Let me see. Carlos says the Mazda 3 manual is really fun, nice and premium feel, but also is fun to drive with the manual. Yeah, and I really hope that I can get my hands on another manual one to spend more time with and try it out myself. But great to hear that you liked it as well, Carlos, and thanks for the suggestion there. Let me see. Zachary says, I tried the profile name, but we're back to the government name. I'll be asking about family cars until I just give up and buy a Bullet and a swivel car seat. There you go. Yeah, I have not tried putting the car seat in the back of the Bullet. My daughter actually has been like wanting to go for a ride in it now, especially once I told her it has a quiet mode, because she's not super in love with like how loud my car is. So I'm like, I can put it on the quiet mode and we can still go for a ride. She wants to go for a ride in it. So it's going to be so hard to get that car seat back there, but I'm going to try and wrestle that thing into the back seat of the Bullet at some point here this spring and take her for a ride in that. But there's a lot of fun family cars too. There's so many fun choices out there. So it doesn't have to be a total penalty box, even if it's not a Bullet. Let me see. PK says you should do a big comparison video for a specific segment, for example, compact SUVs. Those videos obviously do really well, and they're great videos. If you can finagle it, it is just very hard to do. From a scheduling standpoint, especially if you're using press vehicles, it's basically impossible because I only can get one vehicle from each fleet. And basically there's two different fleets that service my channel. So there's, one that does most of the brands, and then there's one that does some of the other brands. And unless there's like a competitor that this brand has, or that this fleet has, and this fleet also has, and I can find a way to book both of those at the same time. Otherwise, for example, the same fleet does Honda and Toyota for me. So there is no way that I would ever have a Honda and a Toyota at the same time to compare them. So I would have to, again, go to a car dealership or, recruit a bunch of viewers and be like, hey, who's got a CRV, a RAV4, whatever, Equinox or whatever, and, try and get all that together, but then trying to coordinate 5 people's schedules, it's really hard. Obviously some channels do it and I commend them, my hat's off to them for doing that, but it is a giant logistical nightmare to do something like that. And so that is the reason why, it's really hard to do. It's one of those things that's like, you only are doing it for the video really, because, you gain a little bit of insight if I'm literally going from one seat to the other within minutes. But I can tell you how all of compact SUVs compare. I can just tell you, like, right now, like, here's where this one's better, here's where this one's worse. Like, so getting them all in the same shot on the same day is just for like a thumbnail and just have people be like, hey, look, he's driven all of them right now. But to me, my video would be the same whether I was sitting in the Bullet talking about, hey, here's all of the compact SUVs and here's what I think about all of them, versus me being like, now I'm behind the wheel of this one, now I'm behind the wheel of this. Like, to me, those videos would be the same as far as what I would actually tell you. It's again just the visuals and just that being more appealing. But that, to me, that causes me to not have the motivation to do it as well, because it's a nightmare to set it up. And to me, you would get the same information. It's just, again, I mean, packaging's everything on YouTube, so it shouldn't be discounted. But it's one of those things that just like grinds my gears. That, like, if I did that video, standing in a parking lot by myself, like, no one would watch it. But if I have all the cars behind me in the thumbnail, then everyone would click on it, and it just would be So anyway, that's YouTube. That's the nature of the game. But yeah, no comparison videos for me, just because they're just a huge pain. And if I can ever do one easily, then I will certainly do it. Like, I mean, one of my most popular videos of all time was comparing the BRZ to the FRS whenever they first came out. And it was here's all the differences between the BRZ and the FRS. My buddy had an FRS. I had the BRZ. That was easy. We show up in a parking lot. We goof around for a couple of hours. I make the video, and it gets, 1.5 million views or whatever it got. So, I mean, there's some of those where it's certainly, if I can do something like that without, a giant barrier to entry there, then I will certainly do that. But it's really hard to do. And so, all of you who see those kind of videos on YouTube, you're very spoiled to see that kind of stuff, because it is a huge undertaking to do that. So definitely show those creators some love on those types of videos, because they're putting in a lot of work to make those videos happen. And Jason says, it's funny looking back, I found you through your Honda CRZ review back when I was obsessed with that car. Now, that was one of the early ones. That's got to be in like the first 10 or 15 cars I've ever reviewed, for sure. And yeah, I'd love to take another spin in a CRZ. I really want to review the supercharged one too. It seemed like that kind of would have fixed most of the problems of the CRZ, but didn't seem like it really saved it in time. But I'd love, those are so rare too. But man, if someone's got a CRZ they'd like me to take a spin in, send me an email. Love to go for another ride, one of those. Two, thank you so much for the very generous super chat. He says, hey guys, tonight there will be no SWF or basement jokes. Last week, two tragically died last week after the live stream. Seems like there's a place, our price when you reveal Mattis's secrets. JK, I'm in with the kids tonight. Well, thanks for joining in anyway too, and thanks for keeping us all laughing. And yeah, if you're tied up with the kids, I totally understand, and we'll see you next week. But thanks so much for stopping by, and hope you have a great week here as well too. And Raphael says, you had a drink for the Alfa Romeo this week. I've always thought that was such a great car. Yeah, I know. And I'm really hoping I get a chance to drive a Quadrifoglio. I'm hoping that, as they're wrapping up production here, that maybe there'll be a Quadrifoglio in the press fleet or something like that. Because that would be fun to kind of do like a farewell video on that car. I think there was regular Giulias at least floating around in the fleet, and I want to revisit that car too, because the last one I did was like a 2017. And so I really want to get in another Alfa. I did the Stelvio last year, but those don't seem to generate as much hype as the Giulias. But yeah, the Quadrifolios were so good. And speaking of that, John Evans, thank you so much for the super chat. He says, hey, Matt, Alfa, Stelvio, Quadrifoglio, or BMW i8? That is quite the comparison. Obviously, I guess we will just not even worry about the practicality, stuff of the i8. I'm just assuming you're just talking about driving experience between the two of them. i8 is fun, and obviously it's going to be a totally different experience being super low versus a super, not super high, but a high SUV compared to the very low slung i8. But between those two, I mean, I'd say that the Alfa is just more exciting. It's got quicker steering. It's got a better sounding engine. The ZF 8-speed is just so snappy in that. And the handling's really good. And, I mean, the i8 was kind of set up to be a little bit more of a hypermiler too, with the tires being kind of skinny and stuff. So it doesn't have a ton of grip. Now, aftermarket, I'm sure if you go and, soup up an i8 with better, grippier setup, it's going to be amazing. But I think out of the box, i8 versus the Quadrifoglio there, I would probably go for the Quadrifoglio as far as most fun, in my opinion. And let me see. So, and thank you so much once again for the super chat. So Carlos says, have you ever reviewed an older Lexus IS? They're kind of coming down in price and they're awesome. I kind of want one as a daily. So I did a 17 IS, I did a 19, I think, and then I just did the 2023 whenever that, or the 22 whenever the refresh came out for those. And then I did also do an ISF a long time ago. I think that was a 2012. I am hoping to review I think it's a 2012 IS 350 that someone offered me here. So that's definitely going to be something. But if you're looking for between 2012 and 2017-ish, don't have everything in that range, but I did do the 17 and the 19. I should definitely check those out. IS is great. Yeah, or maybe are you saying, I don't know if it's a lowercase L or uppercase I for your question, because if it's an LS, have never driven those, but that would be one that I'd be open to reviewing too. And PK says, if you got a Bugatti Chiron press car, would you do it? Absolutely. I would love to drive a Bugatti someday. I mean, it's right up there. I look at it every day. So I would, yes, that would be what I would do. It'd be completely unrelatable and would not be for the everyman, but I would happily take a spin in a Chiron. B. Mitchell says, car seat, she's probably the perfect size for an S550 backseat, aside from the legalities. Right. Yeah, that's true. She'd be, the only kind of size person that would actually enjoy sitting back there, probably. But yeah, it can be done. Actually, the Shelby GT350 that I reviewed a couple years back from someone who offered theirs to me, that one he was doing a road trip in it with his family, and there was a car seat installed in the back of that. And he's like, yeah, like, our daughter's totally fine riding in the back of the Shelby, and it was great. I'm like, oh, this is awesome. This can actually be done. So that is it's good to hear, because I'd love to take my daughter for a ride in the Bullet a little bit this year. And Luke says, if your thumbnail was a RAV4 and CRV, I would say you need new nail clippers. Yeah, those are the top sellers, though. People love them. B. Mitchell says, too, just when I thought that Matt finally got a set of handcuffs that you couldn't pick and remain chained to the radiator. Yep, Matt too finds a way to get out and comment every week. Cam Jam says, if Matt really wants to stand out from the competition and do something unheard of, he should do a British Airlines Concorde review. That would be awesome. I would love to have the Concorde back in service. That was such an epic plane. And there's actually I've been looking at an international flight. I can't talk about what it would be for, but I'm like, man, it takes forever to get to Europe on all these normal planes. And I'm like, what I'm considering doing, there's a potential for an international thing. It's probably not going to happen. But part of the reason why it probably won't happen is because of the time constraints, of just how long it takes to get over, to Europe and then to come back. It's just like a giant headache as far as where it's at in my schedule. And just, it's one of those things where timing wise, it's probably not going to work out. But if the Concorde was available, I could totally make this trip happen. And it's unfortunate that, yes, it's one of those funny things where like we were so advanced and we just take this giant step backwards. And it's really a shame. Concorde, and it wouldn't just be me. All the journalists that do these international programs, especially, I'm sure they would all love to see the Concorde come back. It would make everyone's life so much easier. Double Strike says, apologies, Matt. I got to go lay down. Have a great night and see you all later. Absolutely. No, take care and rest. Hope you feel better soon, Double Strike, and thanks for stopping by. I hope you feel better soon. And Carlos said, yeah, I meant LS. Okay, sorry. So LS I've never reviewed. And I think, well, so I take that back. I did the most recent LS. Yeah, that was, what was that? Maybe a 2018 or something I did. Like nobody watched that video. So that's why I completely forgot about that. But I did do an LS and it was impressive. It's really big and floaty, and it's really smooth. I don't think it's the best in its class in most ways, but it's still really nice. I haven't noticed that they've come down in price. I'll have to check that out. That's interesting. But the older ones are legendary as well. But I mean, it's a Lexus. It's going to be really solid and probably a good buy, just for resale standpoints and stuff like that. So probably not a bad idea. But I'll have to look into that. That's interesting. And John, thanks so much for the super chat again. He says, thank you, Matt. Now about the reliability. So, I mean, both of those cars, are not going to be for the faint of heart. You're going to be someone who has a little bit of a higher risk tolerance if you're going to get either one of those vehicles. Now, the quadrifolios, some of them have had issues, but it seems like most of the issues have been mostly overblown. It seems like most people have pretty good luck with them. There's some electrical gremlins, which can also be said for the German vehicles most of the time as well. And that'd be my concern with the i8 is the electrical gremlins popping up here and expensive maintenances. So that's going to be, to me, that's mostly a draw. Maybe the i8 would be slightly more reliable potentially because BMWs have been pretty good for the past year for most of these recent ones. So I guess it's not a wide margin, but I would say maybe the i8 would be slightly more reliable. I'd have to look at more information on both of them to make a more educated opinion on it, but probably the BMW. But again, if you look at a Stelvio, I mean, I guess if you're shopping new, obviously it's a little bit more of an unknown, but I mean, they are well along in there. Obviously they're at the end of the production run here. So I think, hopefully they've worked out all the kinks at this point and all that. So I think with a new one, you should be pretty okay. With used ones, just go over the Carfax with a fine tooth comb, make sure the servicing's normal and consistent and nothing looks, sketchy on that. Otherwise, if it is, sketchy, then you might have some issues. But if it's, seems like it's a solid car, then hopefully it'll be good. Thank you so much for the super chat again, John. Let me see. So, Carlos, saying about the LS. Spy Harpy says, I drove an early ISF before, had a lot of gears. I remember the difference between top gear and the one below is only 150 RPM or so. What's the point of an extra gear for very little rev drop? Yeah, so I think, these days, most of these modern 8-speeds and stuff have a little bit more spacing there, partially because, they have the turbos and a lot of, you can have it help out a little bit in those lower RPMs. But I think, with like the ISF in that case, it's all about just eking out that better fuel economy rating. And if maybe 150 RPM, again, I can't imagine that moving the needle very much, but, these engineers usually have a good reason why they do that kind of stuff. Even if it's not readily apparent to the driver, it could also just be that they had it in the parts bin. And if the 8-speed was what they had to work with, but they wanted to use the gears, before it as like a normal transmission, but they're like, well, we have to use the 8-speed, but we want to tune it like a 6-speed. Well, then just forget the last 2 gears. And so they just basically made them redundant on the top end there. And just kind of phoned it in for that part of it because they wanted to do a different direction with the first 6 or something, maybe something like that. We could speculate, but I'm sure there's got to be some kind of reason, hopefully, for that. Stud Muffin, thank you so much for the super chat. He says, if the Porsche 992.2 911 is a hybrid, will it be equally as enjoyable as a full gasoline 911 in your opinion? 2025 Porsche 911. So, I think they said what it's going to be, because there was just a big article about this a couple of months ago. I think Motor Trend or Car and Driver or somebody got their hands on like a bunch of the early info. And it sounds like there's a new 6-cylinder that's going to be developed. And that is maybe going to be only in the GTS version, if I remember correctly. Or no, it's going to be in the I can't remember. I covered it in a weekly update a few months back. There's going to be a hybrid one, but then they're going to have a new 6-cylinder supposedly. And so I think, they're going to have the hybrid version for whatever reason. I think, it's also going to be for the places in the world where they get taxed on consumption and taxed on displacement, all that kind of stuff, where, that motor will be the more, that'll make the most sense financially for a lot of people, outside of America. But I think as far as Americans are concerned, again, we're going to get a new flat 6, I believe, from them, if the reports were correct. And I think it's going to be a 3.6 liter, if I remember correctly as well. And that will be the one that's going to be very engaging. And so as far as 911s goes, the fun is far from over, it sounds like. So don't worry about the hybrid one. It sounds like the other revisions are going to be fantastic here for the 992.2. So don't give up hope there on that. And but I mean, the hybrid one, as far as will it be as enjoyable, if they do a cool, boost function with the hybrid, or they do something in it to, make it impressive, then I could see it being, a worthwhile thing. But is it going to be as engaging? Is it going to be as raw? No, and it's probably not going to be offered for the manual either. So there's that. So there's definitely some drawbacks. I wouldn't immediately say it's going to be horrible, but I think obviously, especially if there's the option for a non-hybrid one, which it sounds like there will be, I think most people are going to go for that again, unless you are in a place in the world where you get taxed differently for that. So yeah, but I'm looking forward to the new next generation here, 911. It sounds like it's going to be a pretty cool combo, hopefully. And thanks for the super chat, Stud Muffin. Get a drink here. Carlos says, are you going to review the BRZ TS, or is that too similar to the regular BRZ? No, I'm definitely going to do the TS, partially because I just, selfishly want to go have another go on a BRZ for a week. Yes, that one is actually scheduled for March. Or actually, no, that's April. April, I'll be in the BRZ TS. So I will be in one, and it'll be interesting to see, how, it's just Brembos and, the stickier tires or whatever. But, should be a nice little improvement for sure. And I'm looking forward to it. And BRZ stuff always does well on this channel. So that's one, I'll review one of those every year, even if it's just like me being like, wee, it's fun again. And then be like, bye. Like that would still get views, I think. So, I'll always, go for a spin on a GR86 or a BRZ, just, because I know that there's so many of those people on this channel that just still love that vehicle and remember all the times of me in a BRZ, and they will just always, watch me have fun in a BRZ, thankfully. So that's always going to be a pretty safe bet, I think. And Cam Jam says, there's a company called Boom Supersonic, and they're trying to make another supersonic airliner, but it'd still be slower than the Concorde. Bummer. Yeah. And honestly, I'd feel more comfortable having them bring back, the old Concorde tech versus the crap we're seeing from Boeing these days with the Maxes and stuff. Like, don't get me started on that whole thing. I'll go on a tangent if you guys want, but man, like, as someone who flies a lot, I'm like, I just want to stick to those nice old reliable planes, even if they're slow and even if they're not the most luxurious or whatever. Like, I don't care as long as I'm not falling out of the sky or having doors flying off. Like, I'm good. I can go slow. It's fine. It's all good. So that's it. Yeah, I'd love to see the Concorde come back. And Carlos says, you're always welcome to review my GR86. I appreciate the offer, Carlos. It'd be cool to, at least, even if it's not a review, but just to show off, the exhaust. And, people always like a good exhaust video. If people are shopping around for different exhausts and stuff like that, I'm sure you got something you could post too if you haven't already, just do a little sound clip. Be curious to hear how it sounds there. AWE is some pretty good exhaust typically. So, but yeah, I appreciate the offer, and might be something, especially if, like to compare with, like either a GR86 for the performance pack or the BRZ TS or something like that. It'd be kind of maybe a cool little thing of back to back, like here it is with the performance pack and without. But again, there's not a whole lot there. It's just, I wish they would have done more with those cars for those packages, but for people who'd go on the track a lot, the Brembos will be nice. Let me see. Getting back to I think we're actually caught up on the member questions here. So let me see. Mr. 705 says, if you could have one car, money, no object, what would you choose? I would probably have so if it was me being selfish and not worrying about anybody else, it would be a Ferrari 812 GTS, I think, because it's the convertible thing, it's the V12 thing, and it's just, exotic and fun, but it's not so exotic that I have to be terrified about taking it out and having to worry about it being a giant pain if something happens to it. It's still a vehicle you can get serviced normally. You can get, at least as far as, there's not a Ferrari dealer super close, but, it's not the end of the world versus like a Pagani or a Koenigsegg or something where you have to like send it back to Sweden or Italy if like someone dings your door, So, I think that would be it. Now, if it's something that I need to worry about, taking the family around in and all that, I guess in that case, I'd probably say a Ferrari Purosangue, because you get a V12 and an SUV, and you still have 4 seats and the amazing sound of the Ferrari V12, which is probably my favorite sounding engine of all time, honestly. So that would probably be the pick if money's no object. And B Mitchell says, I'd take the B-52H and the KC-135 tanker I used to fly on in the Air Force, even ancient than the new commercial crap. Yeah, well, I'm not a plane expert, so I don't know too much about the other stuff other than the B-52s, of course. But that's awesome you were in the Air Force, and thank you for your service as well, V. Mitchell. Cam Jam says, do you think that the tamed K20 and the Civic Sport would make the awesome VTEC noise with an intake? I don't know. I really don't know anything about those like lower Civics. I've never driven one of the ones outside of the turbo ones for this recent generation, so I don't know. Maybe someone else can chime in, but yeah, that'd be awesome if it did. And Rafi says, "Woohoo! Hi Matt. I'm glad to make it this week. Happy you're able to join in as well, and hope you're doing well, Rafi." And PK says, "I miss how auto shows used to be. Makes me kind of sad. The vibe is a lot worse now. Yeah, the auto shows are just pretty dead, unfortunately. And I just I don't know. Like even Chicago was like really a dead show for the most part, and that's why I didn't bother going. And we'll see what happens with the other shows later this year. But it's like." It's just, companies are not investing in it anymore. And just for them, it makes more money, more sense, and saves them money to just, have the journalist launches and just do that instead. And Ryan says, hi, Matt, if reviewing cars wasn't your full-time job, what would you be doing instead? Auto engineer, perhaps? I actually wanted to be a mechanical engineer initially. That was my goal in college. But unfortunately, I did not have an engineering mind. I'm just straight up not smart enough, or something. It just didn't click. I tried, but all the weed out classes that you go through in freshman year, they weeded me right out. So that was the end of that. But I would have loved to be a mechanical engineer. And I seriously consider going to Kettering, which is in Michigan, and that's the one where like a lot of the like engineers for like GM and Ford and stuff, like it's like basically like you want to be a automotive engineer, you go to like Kettering or one of those others, and like that they all just like have programs, and they're right there in Michigan, so you just like kind of waltz right into a car job after that. But fortunately, just was not in the cards for me. So what would I be doing as a full-time job? There's a bunch of stuff, and I mean, this is something that I consider, if the channel doesn't improve down the road, I've been, thinking, what would I do? And there's a bunch of different things. And I mean, there's a few different things, since I do have a degree in finance, being like an auto finance guy at a dealership or something is, a potential thing. I'd love to, since I love being on movie sets, anyone who watched the other videos in the past where I talked about, being a movie extra, and we've talked about that in past live streams, it'd be fun to, do more of that, get into the acting side. That's really not like a full-time job to support a family, because it's so hit or miss. But, even if I could just do like some side work, doing, something like stunt driving, or even just, anything like that. I've actually, it's been funny. There's been some of the media drives that I've been on where sometimes we have drivers that like chauffeur us back and forth to like different locations, or they pick us up from the airport and take us to the hotel, things like that. And some of those people that do that are people who are like stunt drivers and just do the press trip stuff like in their off seasons or whenever they're not doing, stunt driving and stuff. And I've talked to so many of them, so many cool stories of some of the stuff that they've done. And like a lot of them, it's just like, yeah, it's just like you just talk to people and you kind of get in with the right people, and then you just do that on the side. So that'd be something I'd love to try and pursue someday. But I mean, most likely, if I, did a full-time job, it would either be working for one of the OEMs, like a PR person. I've had a few other people tell me in the past, like that'd be something I could, probably be really good at. So, probably something like that, or, finance, car manager. There's a few other ideas and like, little more out there things that I won't get into all of my potential backup plans if YouTube doesn't, do well. But I'm hoping, that I can just keep with, doing something car related, even if I wasn't doing car reviews. But I'm hoping the channel keeps on staying afloat here for a long while. And let me see. So Carlos says, I'll send you some clips of the exhaust. Sounds good. I'd love to hear it. Thanks, Carlos. And Ravi says, yeah, I went to the LA Auto Show last year and felt disappointed. Yeah, it's okay. Honestly, LA is one of the better ones, relatively speaking. So yeah, everything else kind of pales in comparison to that. But I am excited for the Detroit Auto Show starting back up in January again next year. That'll be fun, just from the nostalgia standpoint of going to a cold January auto show like I used to, and like many of us have gone to for a long time. And so That's going to be exciting. That's the only auto show I'm excited for. Otherwise, they're all like, whatever. If a car company hosts me and I'm there for a reveal of some other car, I'll go to the auto show. But like, I don't care about going to auto shows at all. Some of the other car viewers, they like make a killing on all these auto show videos that they are able to get massive views on. But I gave that a try. Again, like I was talking about earlier with the competing thing, I just can't compete and my videos get no views. So auto shows never made sense for me to go to anyway. And Cam Jam says, I went to the DC auto show last month. They had a Nissan Aria demo ride, but we're limited to 10 miles per hour. What's the point? 10 miles per hour. I mean, I guess you can be like, whoa, I'm in an electric vehicle. So if you've never ridden an electric vehicle before, there's that. But that's a strange choice. 10 miles per hour. That sounds like the most boring demo ride ever. Interesting. And Nub says, in my area, our BRZ TS ordering has already been turned on and turned back off. Interesting. I didn't know there was an issue with that. That's I guess the good news is, I think maybe Subaru's not doing it, but Toyota is at least doing the performance package as a dealer add-on as well. So if you don't want to buy a new GR86 with a performance package, then you can take in your GR86 and maybe they do it to a BRZ. I don't know. You could call and ask. And it's all the same stuff. They just bolt up the Brembos and the dampers or whatever. And so, I know Toyota's offering that, for any, current gen GR86 as well. So that's kind of a nice way to avoid that for people who do want that. And B. Mitchell says, PK, the thing I miss the most is no brochures. Sure, I get the paperless feature, but I think they're still missing a certain demographic. Now I don't bother with my local auto shows. Yeah, the brochures were fun. I'm right there with you. I remember as a teenager, I had my bag and I collected every single one of those brochures at the stands for each of those, cars, especially my favorite cars. But I grabbed them for like, Mitsubishis and all these other things. Although I guess back then Mitsubishi actually had cool stuff like the Eclipse and the Evo. But yeah, I do miss the brochures. I got a bunch of those laying around here somewhere that I got to dig up someday because there's a lot of fun ones that I've collected over the years. And I see Dominic says, did you hit up the Pit Auto Show this weekend? Did not. Sounded like there was actually a better turnout of cars than I was expecting, to be honest. But no, it's all stuff that I've, for the most part, already seen, again, at the LA Auto Show back in the fall, or have, already experienced or whatever. So it's those local auto shows usually just don't. I only go in the past. I've gone if like a family member or a friend is like considering a new car and they want me to come with them, like kind of talk through them, like, hey, I'm sitting in a CX-5 and then a RAV4 and I can be right there to be like, well, yeah, but how do you like this or that? Or, in real time, be able to like, kind of talk through that with them. So I go to auto shows for other people, but I don't go for myself because especially Pittsburgh is unfortunately just kind of a lame show these days. But Spy Harpy says, I went to the LA car show a few years ago and counted only 4 manual transmission cars, 4 Challenger, Mustang, M2, and one other. It was an automatic. It's an automatic city. Yeah. It's, I guess, especially in LA, they know that very few people want manuals, with the traffic and all that. So I guess it makes sense, but it's just, yeah, manuals are hard to come by these days in general. But surprisingly, they didn't have like a Civic Si or something there, because that's, I feel like, a pretty popular car around there. But Rafi said, hey, Matt, we have a 2005 Pilot I want to replace. I've been thinking about used since everything is so expensive now. I found a used X5 X-Drive 40i for 33 grand with 48,000 miles. Been considering it. Bad idea. So I don't know what model year you're looking at there. I'm assuming it's fairly new if it's 33 grand and 48,000 miles. But I would just say if you're going to go for a used German vehicle, get an extended warranty if you can, for sure. Because the problem is, just the expensive maintenances, the servicing, all that kind of stuff can be expensive. And a lot of that stuff is over-engineered. And so there's more failure points, just more glitches, electrical gremlins, things like that. Again, modern BMWs are pretty good mechanically. The motors are pretty stout. The transmissions, all that main stuff is really good. It's just dumb little electrical things that can sometimes, though, be a big problem. So that's the only stuff. I know, like back in the day, older X5s had like phantom battery drains when they were older. Things like that. Hopefully, most of that stuff is in the past, but I would definitely, look over the Carfax and all that, make sure it's clean and all that. And then aside from that, I would just, no matter what, get an extended warranty and then just be prepared for the fact that you're going to have expensive maintenances. If you can find an independent shop that does BMWs in particular, maybe that'll help you save some money there as well. But otherwise, it's just, those things just, they cost money to take them to a BMW dealer. So that's the only thing to be aware of, especially if you're coming from a pilot where you're not used to, BMW labor charges and all that. It's just going to be a big step up there with that. If that doesn't put you off, by all means, X5 seems great. I haven't reviewed the current Gen X5. Yeah, I did review the current Gen X5. It was actually an X-Drive 40i, I believe. That was probably a 2018 that I did. So, I think it's the same generation, just not the newest refresh of it. And the X5 is a popular enough one that I should probably go back and revisit that. So I may have a used X5 review at some point. Obviously, it sounds like, you have your eye on one car there already. So I won't have a review up in time if you're going to buy something pretty soon here. But I'm hoping to revisit the X5 and see what the newest ones are like here relatively soon. But yeah, I mean, X5 seem like they're really solid vehicles, just as long as you're okay with, all those caveats. Hopefully it helps you a little bit. Let me know if you have any follow-up questions as well. Rafi says the 2019, I found a review that you posted a while back. Okay, so yeah, so that should give you most of the covers there. I didn't have a ton of time with it in that review to get a real in-depth impression on it or anything, but it was really fun. It drove really great. That motor is super punchy, and yeah, seems like it'd be a pretty nice choice. So best of luck with that. And if you have any other questions about it, though, definitely feel free to reach out. I'm more than happy to help you in any way that I can. Let me see. Carlos says auto shows aren't like they used to be. Very disappointing with the DC auto show this year. Toyota, GM, Ford, and Nissan, only big car brands there. Yeah, that's the thing with Pittsburgh too. Like Cadillac, I don't think has been at the auto show for a while. And like a bunch of brands just don't show up too, which, I guess they figure people are just going to go to dealers. But I think auto shows, that is the one thing that auto shows still have, is the nice perk of being able to go to a showroom in a way, getting your hands on a car without having, the pressure of a salesman. And I think that, that is why I think they're worth doing, even if you don't have the newest stuff, even if it's just dealers like bringing one of each in their lineup. I think that would just be a good way to, give people a more comfortable experience. And then, hopefully they'll come back and buy a car, and I think that still has some merit. It's just, the glitzy auto shows of concept cars and cutting edge stuff is just the thing that I think is dying off. But I think, having these regional like tire kicking events is actually still going to be beneficial, hopefully. And Cam Jam says the guy driving was so frustrated because for a whole week he was driving in circles at 10 miles per hour at the auto show. Yeah, that sounds like a recipe for someone to just go completely crazy. I'd just I wouldn't know what reality is at that point. I think, that is, man, that would not be fun going 10 miles an hour all day. And Carlos says, I'm planning on doing the Brembo brake upgrade, waiting to see what kidney I need to give them, though. Yeah, hopefully it's not too expensive. But, and I'll be curious to see how big of a difference the braking is. BRZs, that is definitely one of the common points that needs upgrading typically. So I understand, why that's a popular thing to do. I feel like if you're not doing track driving or really aggressive spirited driving, hopefully it's not something that's really that necessary. But, always having more stopping power is great. That's one thing I love about the Bullet. I don't need Brembo brakes. I was totally fine with my regular GTs with their regular brakes, but you never know when you're going to need the extra stopping power. So if you got the money to spend on it, it's certainly never a bad investment to invest in brakes. Kyle, thank you so much for gifting those 5 memberships. I really appreciate it, and happy to see that a bunch of people were to snap those up there. So thanks, Kyle, for your generosity again. Let me see. So B Mitchell says, I've got 6 file cabinets full of dealership brochures, so maybe no longer giving them out is for my own good. Yeah, it sounds like you got quite the collection there. That's awesome. Let me see. PK says, what brand that is not sold in the US do you want to be sold here? I don't know. I don't know. I'm going to take a drink while I think about this, but you kind of got me stumped. I don't know if there's any brand that I really wish we had. There's cars from other brands that I want to see over here that we don't get. But as far as a brand on the whole, I don't think there's anything. Yeah, I don't know. I really don't think there is a brand, honestly, that I can think about. I mean, there's some stuff I wouldn't mind seeing. Like I wouldn't mind seeing, Peugeot come over, Citroen, any of those French companies that, have tried in the past and failed. I think that could be fun. But there's nothing I have like a burning desire to, have over here. I mean, like having a new Renault 5 would be a cool thing. They're coming back with that as an EV, so I think there's that. But other than that, I feel like there's probably nothing else I can think of that I'd really love to see. Yeah, I don't know. Sorry, I don't have a good answer for you on that one, but I think we got most of the good ones here in the States, in my opinion. And Carlos, thank you so much for gifting 5 more memberships. I really appreciate it, and glad to see I'm able to have some more people there join the membership club. And I see Jeremy's also saying Alpines in the US. Yeah, that'll be a good one to see. Yeah, I think Alpine will be cool, but it sounds like they're just bringing over like giant SUVs. We're not going to get like the A110 or anything exciting like that, So I think that's I mean, it's just to me, I'm struggling to get excited about Alpine coming here, or Alpine, I guess is the proper way to say it. Because it's just, if it's going to be more giant SUVs, like I'm sorry, I'm not going to get excited about more giant SUVs for more companies. It's just like there's so many already, and we already have a lot of really great ones. So I'm just like, I mean, more competition is great, whatever, but I'm burned out on performance SUVs in a lot of ways. I mean, there's again so many good ones. I'm not saying they're bad, but like, I just not something that I get excited about personally. And Rafi says, okay, I already saw that one. PK says BMW is pretty reliable nowadays. If things do go wrong, it's going to be really expensive. Okay, well, there you go. Thanks for the heads up there, PK. And I'll say, see, Project says premium fuel in the X5. Yeah, that's going to be the case with any of the German stuff, since they're all turbocharged and all that. Cam Jam says, I saw a list by JD Power for reliability, and they said that Acura was the 10th least reliable and that BMW was in the top 3 most reliable. They're full of it. I mean, but BMW, the motors are really reliable. It's just going to come down. It's really tricky because a lot of these ratings now take into account like infotainment stuff. And like if your Bluetooth doesn't connect every time, then the car's unreliable. And then people think that like the motors are blowing up, but it's like, no, I just can't make a phone call. But like, so they don't do a good job of separating that. So it's hard to say. Like if Acura is 10th least reliable, is it because everyone hates the touchpad and they can't get their CarPlay to work? Or is it that, cars are stranded on the side of the road? I don't see very many hitchhikers and Acuras, so I don't know. But like, it's really hard to say with some of that stuff. I don't take those ratings as the absolute truth all the time either, because yeah, there is certainly some confirmation bias in a way with some of that stuff, where it's just like the sample is going to be flawed because like Consumer Reports, for example, Consumer Reports polls their readers. Well, what do the readers of Consumer Reports want? They want reliable stuff. That's why they're always watching and reading Consumer Reports. So typically they're going to be mostly buying really reliable stuff. So they're going to have a smaller sample size for the unreliable stuff. And then that means you're not going to have as good of a sample, and you're not going to have as good of a representation. So therefore it kind of just skews everything anyway. And they do disqualify some cars that don't have enough data, but that's still, I feel like, they're going to get more people chiming in with, oh, my RAV4 is great, versus like the 5 people that are like, hey, my Giulia is great. But then you have one person who's like, my Giulia is not so great. And then it's like, okay, great. Well, now we have, 1 in 6 is bad. And then we have 1,000 people that say they love the RAV4, so it's, so those things I definitely take them with a grain of salt. They can be helpful with those rankings, but it's also one of those things where sometimes the anecdotal stuff, or just talking to owners, going on forums, going on Facebook groups for a certain vehicle, gives you all the info you need to know about what are the problem areas for this vehicle. Where is the problem areas? Where are they overblown? Where are they not overblown? And you really get a good feel from other owners in that community. Or, on YouTube, if people do ownership reviews and say, hey, look, my whatever has been terrible or it's been great or whatever, that can also give you a little bit of extra info. And let me see. So, and Rafi says, yeah, there's always the increased cost, with the luxury cars, for sure. So let me see. PK says Alpine announced, they're coming to the US. Yeah. So we'll see what they end up doing. Hopefully it'll be something exciting, but I don't know. I'm not even excited about the new Lotus thing. Like, that's giant and expensive and fast, but it's like, another one that I'm like zero interest in. Carlos says, and with that, I bid farewell. Good night, everyone. Thanks for joining in, Carlos. We'll go for another 25 minutes or so here, and then we'll be signing off as well. But thanks for joining in, Carlos. And Cam Jam says, do you think that you will review a used 2.4 TLX or ILX with a DCT? I would love to do the ILX in particular, because that seemed like a great combo. It was a Civic Si with a dual clutch, which is what everyone says. A lot of people say they want is an automatic Civic Si. And so I don't know why those didn't do better, but I would love to try one out and give it a little bit of airtime and see what it's like. As far as TLX, I'd be up for doing the 2.4 in that as well. My last TLX video didn't do amazing, but I think that could be another one that could be worth doing for sure. But I just don't have any opportunities yet. It just always comes down to what gets traded in and what gets offered to me. And Rafi says some of those reports or groups can be exaggerated. Yeah, for sure. And Doug says, Doug is here. Thanks for joining in, Doug Joseph, and appreciate you stopping by. Let me see. Austin says, I'd love to see more European manufacturers come to the US like Renault if they also brought their small cars. Exactly. Yeah. That's what I want to see, is just the small stuff. And that's why I love Fiat. I love the Fiat's bringing the 500e here. I think it's gonna be a great little car. And that's like one of those ones that I'm one of probably 5 people that's excited for it, but I'm really excited for the 500e. And Rafi says it's too bad they didn't just bring a dual clutch in the Integra, but I understand the cost part of it. Yeah, for sure. That's really the holdup. But with how I feel like the Type S is pretty popular. I don't know. I gotta think that some accountant at Honda and Acura has to be looking at the balance sheet and being like, man, if we put an automatic in this thing, these costs would get paid off so much quicker. I commend them for sticking to the manual only thing. It's a righteous cause, but they got to be leaving a lot of money on the table with not putting an automatic in the Type S. And dual clutch in the Integra for the regular one, wouldn't probably pay off versus the CVT, but for the average buyer. But it'd be fun to see in the performance ones. PK says, I don't trust consumer reports for some brands. They have basically no data. Yeah, exactly. It's a flawed sample, because you're asking people that are obsessed with reliability, about reliability. So it's going to be very skewed. But Cam just says, you have no idea how much I would pay for a Volkswagen Up GTI. That would be a really cool car. Yeah, see, that's like one of those, obviously we have Volkswagens here, but some of the good ones we don't get. And that would be one. Yes, I'd love to see that. I love James May's review on the Up GTI many years ago. It was so fun. But yeah, that'd be a really cool one. I'm right there with you. Alex says, best manual under 20 grand. Well, obviously, I guess you're talking used, and that's really tough because there's so many things. And now, if you're talking absolute best manual experience under 20, if you can find a rough S2000 for under 20 grand, that'd probably be one of the top ones. Any Honda manual, honestly, is going to be a pretty safe bet of being pretty amazing for under 20. Otherwise, yeah, I don't even know what's under 20 grand that's used and sporty that would be fun, because I feel like everything that's more sports car related is going to be more expensive than 20 grand possibly. And if you want a used old last gen BRZ or FRS, it's not the most amazing manual, but it's a manual and it's a fun car for under 20. That could be one. Used Civic Si, again, getting back to the Hondas and all that. And then, it's just a matter of how old you want to go as far as, if you want to go back to E46 M3s, although there's no way one of those is probably under 20 grand unless you're talking about a really beat up one, maybe E36. But I honestly didn't love that manual experience from my old days of working in a dealership that had some of those used. Yeah, I don't know. I'd stick to Hondas if you want the best manual experience, unless you're going 996, 911. If there's any of those left for under 20 grand or something, that could be something. Possibly, because Porsche manuals are great. So that could be one too. I have no clue. Maybe get a 9, or the first gen Boxster for under 20 grand with a manual. That could be maybe something if you're again open for the maintenance that would require. So hopefully that gives you something there. But any of those, any kind of Honda you can get for under 20 with a manual is probably going to be a pretty good experience. And Tom, thank you so much for the super chat. He says, I want to buy my sister a new first car. It's very nice of you. It will also be for my parents. I was thinking Honda Accord or Civic with the 1.5T, Mazda 3. Any suggestions? I want something easy to drive for a new driver. So yeah, all those are going to be great for a new driver. If you want something with a roomy back seat, I'd nix the Mazda 3. It's a little bit tighter than the Civic and the Accord, especially obviously the Accord. The Accord is a really nice, smooth vehicle. It's a little bit on the larger side, obviously. So for a first car, it might be a little harder to park and stuff. So if you're, I would honestly just say Civic. Civic is probably going to be the best bet because it's nice and small for that new driver. It's top-notch safety, and then new Civic really fantastic with the way they have all those new Hondas. They've engineered them to interact better with larger vehicles. So from a safety standpoint, it's one of the ones I'm most confident in as far as small cars goes. The Mazda 3 is also a top mark as far as top safety tip picks and all that kind of stuff too. But I think Accord, it's not like it's that bad, and a new driver can get used to it just fine. But I'd say Civic is a little easier to park, so I go Civic. If you don't care about backseat space, Mazda 3 is also right up there, and also a little more of a luxurious experience. Only thing with Mazda 3 is you got the controller wheel, and that's a little bit trickier to have to manage, especially for a new driver who's got a lot of new things to learn anyway. And then you got to also be like, hey, now also learn an infotainment system versus the Civic just being easy touch, nice and understandable and easy to grasp for anybody pretty much. So I'm leaning towards Civic would probably be the best choice there in that specific situation. Hopefully that helps you. Let me know if you have any follow-up questions. And I did do a review on a Civic Touring if you haven't seen that already with the 1.5T. Obviously, it's the fully loaded one, but same motor. And, that gives you all my thoughts here on the new Civic. I'm really impressed with the new Civics. The driver inputs are all great. It does really well on gas and really safe, really nice and spacious, just really a solid all-around car. A little pricey these days, but, I think you get a nicer car for your money than most of the competitors. Again, Mazda 3 is also right there with it. And honestly, a little more luxurious in some ways and a little punchier too. With that motor in the Mazda 3. But, I think that the Civic for your case is probably going to be the best bet in my opinion. Hopefully it helps you. And thanks so much, Tom, for the super chat. And Rafi says, surprisingly, you can find used Integra manuals in the low 30s now. Makes an interesting proposition for something newish, all less than 5,000 miles too. Nice. I'm glad to see they've come down a little bit because they're like 36 or 37 new. So yeah, and I was surprised just the other day for kicks. I looked up to see if used new gen Civic SIs have depreciated at all, and they actually have. You can there's been a few I saw out there for in the mid 20s, like 25 or so, which is surprising because a lot of dealers are still charging markups on the SIs, and they're clearly smoking something because it's I don't know why they think you can get away with that still, but some of them are trying it. But yeah, I'm happy to see that the SIs have also started to come down a little bit, and it's great to see affordable used vehicles that are starting to have rational price action once again. And PK says, do you think the 2035 ICE ban will actually be achievable? Depends on where you're talking about. Different parts of the world have different cultures, different driving requirements, different needs, different wants, all that kind of stuff. So I don't think there's any kind of global, thing as far as everyone, hoping that that's going to be the goal. I think it's going to be on a per country basis. And, even a lot of countries, I think it's going to kind of be pushed back. So, the countries that are planning, 2035 ICE ban, which is again, just specifically new vehicle sales. I think that it's for some countries it will be achievable. I mean, Norway already has, I think, 60% of new car sales or something like that are already EVs. I mean, Norway is already most of the way there. So, for certain countries, they'll probably be able to do an ICE ban by, 2028 or something like that. But for others, it's going to be a lot of a longer road. And, here in the States, I'm sure it'll be much longer than that too, if ever. So, I think it's going to come down to the countries. But I think that, right now, again, we are still in the kind of first gen EV stage. And so for a lot of people, it's really hard to envision, that. But the thing that I always go back to is, how much things can change in 11 years. 11 years ago, think about how different the world was. And, 11 years ago, what were we on? Like, we were on probably what, like iPhone 4? I mean, not like that's like a great comparison, but just like the amount of technology, the way things have progressed, and just how everything has changed. 11 years ago, there was no Hellcats. There was no, I mean, it's a lot can change. And so, especially when you're talking about battery technology that's being heavily invested into, we have these next gen batteries that are coming with 600 miles of range and 5 to 10 minute refill times. If that kind of stuff truly comes to fruition like they're planning, then that might seem a whole lot more obtainable, and you have a lot of those barriers to entry. If the cost comes down and stuff, then that 2035 might be like, oh yeah, like we can all do it in 2035. That's not a big deal. It might be like that, it might not. I mean, typically with politics and goals and stuff, everything is pushed back and compromised and partially thrown out or thrown out entirely or whatever. So we will see what happens. I think that I think that this isn't just like a policy thing. I think that there are other factors that are driving, this transition. And I think that, those are things that aren't going to go away. And so I think that the goal and the bands have some staying power, whether it's 2035 or, a few years after, might be, something that's up for debate. But I think that, eventually most countries will get there. And I think, again, it won't be as bad as it seems in 2024 terms, because we're talking about next, 2-3 gens down the road of this EV tech, which will be miles better. And we're talking about a time when we'll have, hundreds of thousands of chargers, of fast chargers everywhere, and all that stuff. And it's going to be a very different world at that point. So, it's one of those things to be just waiting and seeing, see what happens. And Ryan Johnson, thank you so much for the super chat. He says, what are your favorite movie cars other than the Bullet? Herbie Fully Loaded was one of my favorite childhood movies, so I've always had a soft spot for Beetles. Herbie was definitely fun for sure, and that's the one I actually really want to show my daughter, the Herbie movies. We haven't shown them yet, but I want to show her those. But other favorite movie cars, for me, it's all the Fast and Furious stuff. I have some of the cars there, the bottom. I mean, the Fast and Furious, the first movie in particular, those ones really stand out. That Supra, the Eclipse, even the GTR from Too Fast, Too Furious are really up there as well. Beyond that, I mean, modern stuff, like I really love Baby Driver, the WRX and Baby Driver, being a WRX fan, seeing him hoon that car around, such a great movie. And so that's another top one. I'm trying to think of other favorite movie cars. I mean, obviously, like, it's also like the Dark Knight, Tumbler, and that's one of my top ones. I mean, all the Batmobiles are awesome, of course. So there's those, and then the James Bond, Aston Martins, all those over the years, and are some of my favorites. So yeah, I'd say those are probably the top ones: James Bond stuff, Fast and Furious. Back to the Future DeLorean is amazing, and that was one I actually got to review, Back to the Future DeLorean, back in 2015, and that was amazing. Really a bucket list thing that's still, even though that was early in my career, that I look back and that is like still one of my favorite cars that I ever reviewed, just because, I mean, it wasn't an amazing driving experience, but just driving a Back to the Future DeLorean, it's a clone, a replica, but still getting to drive that as someone who has this huge movie car affinity was just like, I really like, it was like a huge achievement for just me and my personal enjoyment. So that was definitely one of the top ones. Back to the Future DeLorean is just so awesome. So that's probably all of them. And yeah, I'm very passionate about movie cars. And so thanks for the fun question there, Ryan. And let me see. So I missed a few questions here. I don't want to miss too many. Cam Jam says you can get a used Mazda 6 for pretty cheap. Yeah, Mazda 6s are actually, I've neglected to mention that the other day whenever I was talking about the family car question. And you're right, Mazda 6s, they're also really smooth. They're just as smooth as the Accord, in my opinion, maybe even a little bit smoother, really luxurious. Just again, not the most spacious, but Mazda 6s are really great. I only reviewed one right before they kind of went away, but they're really nice cars too. And me see. Rafi says in SoCal, they're still asking for markups on the SIs. They claim they're special cars like the Type R. I still find myself calling for the new Type Rs, even though I don't need one. I love my FK8. Yeah, man, these Honda dealers, they're really some of the most stubborn ones. They're right there with Nissan with thinking that everyone needs to like pay a markup on a Z still. It's like, this is, times are changing. Like they need to like drop these stupid markups. Ugh, so annoying. And Cars Tech Woods, as much as I want to have a manual in the new 4Runner, I probably would buy the auto. Manual and SUV is fun for the first week. It's a must in a sports car for me. Yeah, I mean, it just comes down to, there's some people with, daily drive Wranglers, which is not a good manual experience, but people do it and I commend them for it. Yeah, I really hope they put a manual in the 4Runner. That'd be really cool. And I mean, it seems like it's fairly likely if they just copy and paste all this stuff from the Tacoma, but it'd be so cool to see that return, because it hasn't been in the 4Runner for a long time. So I'm hoping that they do that, and I hope that it actually does have a decent take rate, because that would be cool. Because I mean, honestly, it's fun, and I understand your point about it's fun for the first week, and I feel like, though, it's just the engagement. As someone who's owned every car that I've ever had has been a manual as far as cars that I've bought. Like, for me, just, it's not like it's a fun thing all the time, more so than it's just having the control. Because I mean, even modern automatics like sometimes annoy me. I'm like, oh, I gotta sit here and wait for a downshift, or I have to like, it's just being weird. And I like just being like, I want to go into fourth gear now and like just doing it myself. I don't know. It's just one of those things. Like, I think it comes down to like, are you the type of person that like has like an electric trash can where you wave your hand over and it opens it up? Or I just like me, I just have a pedal one. I just want to step on the pedal and open up the trash can. Like, it's just a personality thing, I think, too, for some people. But I think if I were doing a Tacoma, I'd probably try and go for the manual. And Rafi says, oh man, I still haven't seen Baby Driver. I forgot about that movie. Highly recommend. It's really, especially if you like music as well, like great soundtrack and really good driving. Like the thing I love about Baby Driver, not to get in a soapbox here, but Baby Driver did like real stunts. Like, it's not like Fast and Furious and all these movies where like it's all CGI green screen crap, which is entertaining in its own way. But like Baby Driver was like real stunt drivers, like doing real stunts. And I think maybe a little bit was like artificial, but I actually think every single stunt was real, at least as far as the car stuff. Like they did all the stuff that WRX did, like it did it in real life. And that's the kind of stuff, that's why I love Bullet and a lot of the older movie chases, is like they really actually did that. That makes it way more exciting to me, because like, yes, it's a movie and it's a controlled environment and obviously they're not going to die, but like, it's more thrilling to be like, holy crap, that person's actually jumping that hill, or they're actually doing like a 180 like in real life, versus Vin Diesel on a green screen going like this, and there's he's in a studio. Like it's it's still like, wow, like this is a crazy suspension of disbelief, and you are caught up in the story and it's whatever. But just as someone who really values realism, like Baby Driver has got so much realism. It also has John Hamm, and I'm a very big John Hamm fan, so there's that too. But no, the car stuff is just top notch soundtrack. Really, really recommend the movie. And let me see. So Jason says that DeLorean was a fun review for sure. I'm glad you liked it, Jason. Yeah, that was a special one for sure. And Cam Jim says dealer near me is charging 50 grand for a used FL5 Type R. Oh man, yeah, good old Honda dealers. And Rafi says, I just love manuals. My parents and sister were out of town for 2 weeks and I drove their cars. I really miss driving manual. Definitely came to the realization I always need a manual car. Yeah, I think I'm right there with you, Rafi. It's there's a lot of really good automatics, and I'm sure I could live with one, but I'm right there with you. I'd love the engagement of the manual. Nope says, I had a customer come in the other week to get a new WRX. He was looking at Type R Civic down the street from us. They wanted 20 grand over sticker from him. And this is why I think Subaru is selling so many WRXs, because even though the styling isn't amazing, I think most people are like, you know what? I can get this car for like sticker or even a few grand less. I've been seeing most places. People get them for discounts, and it's a lot of car for the money. And I'm happy for Subaru that they put it out there and they priced it reasonably, and then thankfully the dealers aren't greedy, it seems. And yeah, I think it makes the WRX proposition so much stronger, knowing that it's a good base vehicle. You don't need to go up to a higher trim. It's a lot of car for the money, and the dealers aren't going to rake you over the coals. Like, it's huge. That is huge. And with so many people saying dealer experience is like one of the worst things, like they hate it. Like, and then you see the markups and stuff. Like, I feel like dealers that don't do markups and companies that are known to have most of their dealers not do markups, like, it's just going to be a softer transition. It's going to be easier to sell them, because it's like, yeah, like I go into a dealer, I know I'm not going to be given a runaround. Like, it's simple, it's straightforward, it's easy, and it doesn't like ruin your day. Like it's a simple thing, you would think, but it's like so crazy how so many dealers make it so painful for no reason at all, aside from their own greed, I guess. But B Mitchell says, much prefer manual for winter driving, but no dice for any full size 4x4 pickup for the last decade. And at that, the last was a Cummins Ram. Yeah, it's a shame they're not offering it in the full size ones, but the mid-size ones are, really nice too. If that's something that works for you, it's great to see it in the Tacoma. And who else sells the manual? Does the Frontier still do it, or no? Frontier, I think, got rid of it too. Is it just Tacoma now? There's got to be something else, unless maybe it is just Tacoma. But Tacoma's great with a manual. That's definitely the way to go, I think, if you're shopping for a manual truck. And also tying back to movie cars, if I were to get a mid-sized truck, it would totally be a black Tacoma, and I would try and do a modern reinterpretation of the Back to the Future Toyota truck for sure. That'd be so cool. But Rafi says you can get a great deal for a WRX. I had a few dealers reach out and offer great deals for a new car. Yeah, I'm so happy to hear that. And yeah, just good that at least not all the dealers have lost their minds. Cam Jam says, drove a WRX, loved it, but sound systems are important to me, and it was terrible. Don't want the CVT, so can't go for the GT. Yeah, the packaging, the way they did it is silly. And I believe you can get the Harman Kardon though in the upper trims, I think, right? I mean, the Harman Kardon's not amazing either, but if you're looking for a stereo upgrade, you can get it outside of the GT. And Nup says we usually have our WRXs marked down. That's great. Thank you for being a reasonable dealer. And feel free to plug yourself, by the way, too. If you want to shout out your dealer, more than happy to promote any dealers that are doing discounts. That's always something I'm happy to promote. And B Mitchell says Taco for only a pickup is the only one with a stick, but not rolling out a Bronco. Gotcha, with the EcoBurst 7-speed. Yeah, that's true. I always forget about the manual in the Bronco, but yeah, they have it too. And actually, no, it's Gladiator has a manual too. So that was the other one I was forgetting. Yeah, so Gladiator is the other one with a stick, but I would not recommend a Gladiator. They have their place. If you need Wrangler off-road ability with a truck bed, then that's your truck, obviously. But otherwise, Tacoma's going to be the way to go if you want a manual. And Luke says, Matt, not sure if you remember, I asked about 2SS or a C7 Stingray. After some research, I see lots of posts about the torque tube failing and are out of warranty. It costs $6,000 to replace with the same part. So I'm not sure if that's in relating to the C7 or the Camaro, but yeah, if that's a common thing, then definitely avoid that. I don't think I've heard about that. And I actually know someone with a used C7 in one of the first model years of the C7, and they've been fine, but obviously, again, it's the luck of the draw, I guess, some of that stuff. And it says replacement part is not revised or anything, so it's bound to happen again. That's not great. C70 says, sorry. Gotcha. Well, that is certainly a bummer on the C7, because C7 is a great car otherwise. But yeah, I mean, I guess in that case, then just go for the Camaro. I mean, Camaro is still great too, so not really a bad thing to swap in for the C7 there. But I mean, I'll have to ask my buddy with a C7 if his has had no issues. He's actually got a YouTube channel as well, Car Guy 11. He's in the Pittsburgh area here as well, but he's got a C7, and I think he's up to like 35,000 miles or something on it. I mean, it's not massive miles, but more than probably the average Corvette. But he's been fine with his. That's unfortunate though. And let me see. So, Jeremy says, looks like BMW dealers are discounting new M2s, M3s, and M4s for over 10%. Why do you think BMW can't move these? Interesting. I didn't know that was a thing. I mean, I would say maybe it's because of the styling, but it sounds like according to BMW that the styling hasn't hurt their sales of those vehicles. I mean, I guess maybe for some of it, it's just people that everyone that already wanted one already has one kind of thing, and so now people are a little more of a harder sell for those. I think it also, we know that the M3 is getting a slight refresh with the new screens, the new headlights and stuff. Same for the M4. So maybe there's some people that don't want that old look, with the new one right on the horizon there. And new M2, there's talk of, higher performing versions of the M2. So maybe a lot of people that have already said, I just want an M2, they've already got theirs, and all the other fans are holding out for, the higher performing versions. And so, maybe that's, why there's not as much hype right now for M2s, but that's great to know. And anyone else, there you go. Great info there about that. It might actually be a worthy video topic to be like, hey, if you want an M product for over 10% off, there you go. That's good to know. So thanks for the heads up, Jeremy. And yeah, I would just say that'd be my best guess as far as why they can't move them. Otherwise, I don't know what the problem would be, honestly. And Cam Jam says, didn't know until now that Harman Kardon was available with the limited WX. Might have to rethink the whole manual hatch thing. Gotcha. Yeah, and Harman Kardon's, I mean, it's not bad. I even tested it in the regular Impreza and the RS, and it was actually decent in that as well. So yeah, I mean, it's again not an amazing stereo, but not horrible. Actually, my buddy has a limited WX. I should ask him what he thinks about the stereo. Maybe I'll text him this week and then I'll get back to you. Cam Jim actually says, never mind the 38 grand. Well, they might be discounted. I think my buddy got like $2,000 off his. I don't know if that moves the needle for you as much or not, but you might be able to find a deal on one. Also, consider a used one. They've been out since 2022 model year, so you can. There's 2024 is now hitting the lots, I think. So, you got a couple of years to work with there. If you're okay going used, pick up a limit. I think I've seen some limiteds even around 30 grand or maybe even slightly under. So, maybe that's another potential avenue there too. But WRX is great and a lot more power than all the manual hatches there that you're considering if that's something you're open to. And Luke says, I was thinking it might be similar to the Mustang shift fork issue where only a small bunch of people have it, but not sure. Yeah, it could be. I don't know. Corvette forums, things like that would be the best place to see, how common that stuff really is. But hopefully it's not too common. That'd be a bummer if it was. He says, I have a 2018 GT now and haven't had the fork issue since I got it 5 to 6 years ago. Yeah, I mean, knock on wood, my 2019 Bullet has had no issues really either. And Michael says, Matt, 997 GT3 is the best car I have ever driven. What is your personal favorite / best car that you have ever driven? I think personal favorite best car. I don't know. There's so many amazing cars that I've driven that picking an all-time favorite is really tough. I mean, the new Corvette C06 is really close. It's really close to the top. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I've driven some cool stuff even off camera too. It's been really fun. I also the Jaguar F-Type R that I reviewed many years ago. It's not like the most amazing car objectively or, in all the normal car reviewer metrics, but as someone who loves just what that car offers and the unique packaging that it offers and the beautiful styling and just the vibe of the Jag and stuff, it's just, that was one of my favorites for sure too. DeLorean, like I said, it was another one just from a personal, like kind of loving the Back to the Future movie and being in a clone of that car was really cool. So, I mean, 997 GT3 is amazing. I reviewed one of those as well a few years ago. Fantastic, amazing car. Definitely, a top one as well. But yeah, Z06, the new Z06 is probably pretty close. The 458 Spider I reviewed a few years back is also really close to the top too. But yeah, I'd say probably, yeah, one of those. I'd have to really like make a list of every single thing I've ever driven and been like, what is the top? Because nothing stands out in my mind as like ding 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 ding. This is like the most amazing thing because I've just driven so many good cars that I love for different reasons in different ways. But the new Z06 is really close. I mean, that thing was a dream. But anyway, I just noticed we're over time here. I didn't even notice we were a few minutes over, but I'll answer the last few member questions here and then we'll head out. But Jason says, anyone need a used GR Corolla Core? Got it at my dealership price, slightly below MSRP. Well, there you go. Anyone who's looking for a GR Corolla, that's great to hear. Yeah, hopefully it sells quickly for you there. It's highly recommend the GR Corolla, as many of you know. Love those things to death. So great to see that, those are starting to, get a little bit cheaper too. Cam Jam says, just found a Demex Limited for 28 with 33,000 miles. We'll consider. Well, there you go. And Luke says, the newer year F-Type seem a little less rowdy than the one you reviewed a few years ago, at least the vids I've seen. Yeah, it sounds like they have definitely, with the particulate filters on the exhaust, they're not quite as rowdy. I would go for the pre-refresh for sure. I like the older styling better anyway. And yeah, they're more rowdy, or for the old ones, they're more rowdy. And honestly, I'd even go for like the first model year, because that was like really one of the only ones that had rear-wheel drive with a V8 and its full-blown like R spec. Because I think after the first year or two, they put the all-wheel drive in, they got heavier and stuff. The rear-wheel drive one is a handful, but I think that's what I love, is just that car is really sinister and keeps you on your toes. And so I think a rear-wheel drive F-Type, those early ones would be, I mean, again, it's a used European vehicle, so I'd have to get an extended warranty and all that, but man, I'd still love an F-Type, especially, seeing how much fun Jeremy Clarkson had in the sand job this past week, which, by the way, I mean, I guess I won't give any spoilers, but the F-Type did really well in that very abusive environment. And that made me be like, wow, well, maybe like, F-Types are pretty solid cars. I mean, I've heard some people had some issues electrically with them as well, but I think mechanically, hopefully they're pretty solid. So still hoping someday I can find a way to get an F-Type. But anyway, Nub says, I forgot, where can we submit our vehicle for vehicle of the week? So if you go into my description here of every video, I have all my contact info. Feel free to reach out in any form that works best for you. Email is the best, usually for high-res images and stuff, but some people have also DM'd them on Instagram, so you can do that as well if you'd like, or whatever works for you. But any of that stuff is any way you can send pictures and connect on social is the way to do that. But anyway, thank you all very much for watching. Sorry I wasn't able to get to all the non-member questions, but anyone who always has a question, feel free to also use the description there. Check out any of my social links. Feel free to send me a message on Facebook, Instagram, whatever, and I'm always happy to answer any questions any of you guys have. But anyway, thank you all very much for joining. Have a great week, and lots more of those little live stream clips here coming here in this next week, and some good car reviews and some interesting stuff as well. So take care, and thanks for watching again.